Going ahead and call this meeting to order. My name is Jacqueline Lopez, Chair of the Indio Planning Commission. This is for the Planning Commission date of December 8th, 2021. And if we can please get the roll call.
Chairperson Jackie Lopez,
Present.
Vice Chairperson Nico Luciano,
Present.
Commissioner Christian Rodriguez Ceja.
Here.
Commissioner Gloria Franz,
Present.
Commissioner Esperanza Valdez.
Present. And at this time, if we can go ahead and Vice Chair, would you please lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please repeat a pledge of allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Next, we have the rotation of Chairperson and Vice Chairperson.
Thank you. This is an annual exercise by the Planning Commission in which we asked the outgoing chairperson, which is in this instance Chairperson Lopez, to do the formal ceremonial handing over the gavel to the incoming chairperson, which is in this instance Vice Chairperson Luciano. But before that, on behalf of staff, we want to thank the chairperson for her leadership and her patience with staff and working with us throughout this last year in challenging times as we transition from a virtual only back to a hybrid in-person meeting format. And thank you for your availability and meeting with us. We certainly appreciate it. And I would request that if the commission will join me in a round of applause for Chair Lopez. And at this time, if we can have the ceremonial handing of the gavel to the chairperson.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to congratulate Christian Rodriguez Ceja, who will be our new vice chairperson. He's joining us virtually this evening. So, and thank you both for your willingness to take on these responsibilities. And we look forward to, as staff, working with all of you as well as the rest of the commission. And we will go forward from there. So thank you again. Thank you very much, Jackie. Really appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. I'll save my comments for the end, I guess. But go ahead, Chair, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jackie. First item is public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments for items not on the agenda?
There were none.
Thank you. And then we'll go into minutes. We will do the minutes separately for July 28th and August 11th. I believe Commissioner Rodriguez Ceja was absent from July 28th, correct? So can I get a motion to approve the minutes for July 28th?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve minutes for July 28th, 2021. I'll second.
Okay, can we do a roll call vote?
Chairperson Jacqueline Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Luciano,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
And then can we make a motion to approve the minutes for August 11th, 2021?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to pass the minutes for August 11th, 2021. I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Lopez,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Luciano,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
and I apologize, Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Ceja.
Yes. Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, I'd like to take a moment to let Kevin Snyder introduce some new staff members to our planning department.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And just want to take a moment of the commission's time to introduce you to some new staff members. As the commission is aware, we've had some pretty significant changes in our planning division over the last couple of months. We've had some folks move on to other opportunities, including most recently Layla Nambar, who was senior planner. She's now helping, she's working with our deputy city manager and helping to run our public arts program. So we want to say thank you to Layla. She served almost 17 years in various roles within the planning division and did an outstanding outstanding job. She'll be missed, but I'm happy for her and excited for her new opportunities. I know that she's excited about it. So with all these changes, we've had the chance to go out and recruit. We have been successfully able to recruit some outstanding individuals. And at this time, I'd like to introduce them to you. We're missing one. That person will join us in early January. But for this evening, I'd like to introduce you to Maribel Corvarubias. Am I saying that correct? I can never get that right. This is Maribel's our new assistant planner. And she started a week ago, a little over a week ago with us. Jesse Jimenez. And Jesse is another assistant planner with us. And Jesse has the distinction of, this is his second tour of duty with the city, I believe. He served at the city back in the early or late 90s and early 2000s. And then Manuel Roca is our new planning technician. And Manuel just joined us on Monday. So Jesse and Maribel had the distinction of being here a little over a week and a half. Jesse's been on the job for 2 days. Excuse me, Manuel's been on the job for 2 days. So thank you to the three of you for joining the team. We're looking forward to it. And Planning Commission, this is almost your new planning team. And we're looking forward to having them work with you. I think you're going to be really happy with them and their work products. And so looking forward to kind of a new chapter, if you will, for the planning division. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And moving on to public hearing items, our first item is continued from November 10th. Conditional use permit 21-07-1068 APC Tower CA-1077 Bakey property.
Chair, I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself from this item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I need to read out what's below that, or do we go to staff report?
You don't need to read it, Chair. It's stated for the public record. So it's certainly your discretion if you so choose to, but it is in the public record. And so if you're ready for the staff report, we're happy to proceed.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. And this item is continued from November 10th. At that time, the meeting, this item was continued due to a lack of quorum. So this is the public hearing for this item. And this particular item, oh, good, it works. So this is under our code, this is what's considered a large cellular tower application, which requires review and consideration by the Planning Commission. This particular property is located in what is called our workplace employment district, which is the general plan designation. And it is in a property that is currently zoned regional commercial. The proposal is a installation of one 65-foot tall cellular tower. It is proposed as a stealth design, as a faux eucalyptus tree. Typically, the commission has seen these come in as a more of a palm tree design, but there's nothing in our code that says it can't be an alternate design. So this eucalyptus tree design is a little bit different and distinctive from what the commission might have seen before, but it is allowed by our code. And it would be accompanied by a 7-foot high CMU wall enclosure of 520 square feet for equipment. And so with surrounding landscaping. So this is representations of what the tower will look like with its equipment and that CMU surrounding block wall, just to give you some perspectives. Again, 65 feet tall. This is a representation of what this will look like. Obviously, this is a little bit different environment, but it kind of gives you a sense of the scale. This is showing you the location of the area that's proposed for installation. Excuse me, the previous one was just representations of other areas in the city. This is more in the area that's proposed. This is the subject property. And this particular property is along Calhoun Street. If you look to the immediate right of the picture where that small sign is, that's the property in question. So the staff recommendation after a thorough review and consideration and subject to the findings and conclusions that are contained in the staff report that was previously distributed to the commission and made available to the public, staff recommendation is to adopt resolution number 2008 that would approve the conditional use permit authorizing the construction of the 65-foot tall wireless facility designed as that faux eucalyptus tree with the accompanying 7-foot high CMU block wall, and also determining that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And again, this is considered exempt under the provisions of the California because it is an infill project. So with that, staff is happy to answer any questions. And if there are no questions, then staff is certainly available throughout the public hearing to respond to any questions the commission might have, as well as during your deliberation. Thank you.
Do any commissioners have any questions for staff?
I'm just curious as far as the design, why a eucalyptus tree and not a palm tree on this, on the
So,
tower?
Oops, excuse me. So the applicant is available to answer that. I think that they've had experience with this design elsewhere and wanted to bring it here. Again, there's an encouragement of a palm tree design in our code, but it's not a mandate. So they do have the opportunity to present an alternative design consideration to the commission for your review. And but specifics as to why this particular design, I would defer that to the applicant during their testimony.
Thank you. I was just curious. It's a little, it looks pretty cool and different. I was just curious as to why a eucalyptus tree and not a palm tree. Now on where this tower is going to be built, is there going to be any other kind of construction going around the tower?
Just to clarify, Commissioner, are you talking about on the site itself?
On the, how big is the lot or the space at where this tower is going to be built?
This property is, let me just get that for you 1 second. And a lot of different properties in my head, so I apologize. It's approximately, I believe, 2 acres. I will confirm that, but I believe it's 2 acres in size. So there is the potential for other utilization of the property, not just for this proposal. You'll see that often that where these facilities go in, there may be a future accompanying development. So they typically try to place it to not forestall the future development of the property for other uses. Obviously, that would be subject to its own separate review and consideration, perhaps by the Planning Commission. So in the future, but in this particular instance, this is just what's proposed at this time. We have in the past talked with the owner of the property on various uses that he has considered for the property, and I'm assuming that at some point he may want to bring in other alternate uses for that property to seek further development of the remaining portion of the parcel.
Thank you. Another quick question would be as far as the tower, does that help supply? I know it's for cellular use, but Wi-Fi as well? Is that part of it?
Typically, they're cellular towers, so they're typically network-related towers for an institutional carrier normally. The applicant, again, may be able to give you the specifics as to who the potential carrier is. Wi-Fi is a little bit different animal, if you will, although we get Wi-Fi obviously via our cellular phones in supporting areas. They don't typically act as Wi-Fi relayers, but again, the applicant can give you further technical details.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, if the applicant's here and they'd like to add to staff report, we'd love to hear from them.
Yes. Good evening. This is Damian Pichardo with Coastal Business Group, speaking on behalf of APC as the applicant. Just want to.
Excuse me, one moment. Before we do that, I'd like to open the public hearing, please.
Sure.
And I think, Chair, at this time, you
please.
can proceed. Yes.
Please proceed.
All right. Good evening again. So I have 3 questions written down here. So I'll touch on each, and thank you, Mr. Snyder, for the presentation and addressing some of those questions as you saw fit. So the first question I have written down was.
Sorry, this is Kevin. Can I interrupt you real fast? Can you restate your name for the record? I think there was a little talking over at the beginning, so it may not have been on the record.
Not a problem. Yes. So my name is Damian Pichardo. I'm with Coastal Business Group and I'm representing APC as the applicant.
Thank you.
No problem. So to answer the first question I have here of why we decided to pursue this design. So there's a couple different reasons. I'll start with the primary. So understanding that the city may have a preference towards monopalms, and our proposal is obviously a mono euc or faux eucalyptus, as you can see by the pictures presented. This is really to, the primary reason would be to allow for future co-location of other carriers onto that tower. Typically with palm trees, when the second carrier is to come and co-locate or install their facilities on that same tower, you might not be able to maintain that same palm tree aesthetic when you have now additional antennas below that initial palm fronds. So essentially you can't have two sets of palm fronds on your tower, otherwise it'll obviously look a little odd. It won't look like a palm tree. So with the mono eucalyptus, one of the biggest positives of going with that design is we can add additional carriers, and those will all pretty seamlessly, be disguised within the branches that are going down the extent of the tower, as they're shown on there. So basically, it's going to provide better opportunity for screening for a future carrier to come in and co-locate. As far as construction goes on the property, I don't have any additional information on what the future development plans are on there, on that property myself. But typically, yeah, we would be able to, we tried to locate our facility as far away from where any potential future development would be. So we worked with the property to ensure that where we placed this wasn't in the middle of the property that would inhibit future development. We tried to push it onto the outside of the property line so that they could potentially develop around our location. And as for the last question about providing Wi-Fi through this facility. So this tower and the facility will not provide Wi-Fi. It'll provide your typical cell phone services. So, PCS data and data through your phone. So you'll have internet through your phone if you're a customer of this carrier. We are proceeding with T-Mobile is going to be our first carrier who co-locates onto this facility. But as mentioned previously, there may be other carriers down the line who are interested in also co-locating their equipment on this facility, and they too would then have that their services operating from this tower. And I'm open to any other questions as well.
Mr. Franz?
Yes, quick question for you. So do we have a site plan where you have designated where exactly this will be located? Because like you said, your plan is to move it to the edge of a property so that it doesn't inhibit future development, but how do we know where it's actually going to wind up? Normally we get a site plan that says this is where we're going to place it. Do we have that?
If I can jump in, Commissioner, yes, it's attached to the packet that shows the site location on the property.
Can it be brought up just because we don't have our usual
displays?
Yes.
Yes. Can you give us just a second to do that?
Absolutely.
Great.
While you're looking at that, I can ask you a second question. When they showed us photos of the eucalyptus towers, there were several different versions. Some had very little foliage, some had significant foliage. How do we know which one you are planning to place on this particular site? Because it will look very different based on which of those you actually select.
Yeah, that's a good question. And if we can eventually flip back to that slide, it did appear to me that some of those actually were not mono eucalyptuses and they may have been mono pines, so looking like a pine tree instead. But yeah, so over time, there is a potential for winds and weather to deteriorate or lose branches. But as part of our building permit process, we will have full tower details for the construction of that tower that will have some information on branch density, the lengths of these branches, so you can get an idea of how the foliage will be designed for this specific tower.
Okay, so then I'll wait to have that brought up so you can point to which one it is that we can expect to see on the property. Sorry, I forgot my mic was off.
Actually, so commissioners, Vanessa has shared her screen. Is that visible to all of you?
Yep.
And it is showing the location of the facility on the site. That is that boxed out area, kind of center on the corner there. Is that visible to everyone?
Yes.
So I'm assuming it's the one with the little dashes around it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Damien, do you want to explain this a little bit more?
Yes, so the dashes is just a reference to the next sheet down, which will have a zoomed in version of that. So within those dashes, you'll see the bolded line, and then you'll kind of see a little triangular shape and equipment platform. But yes, within that dash line, there's a equipment area that's better detailed here on the right as he scrolls down. Yeah,
So-
right there.
Commissioners, that what Vanessa has scrolled to is the detail that Damien was referring to. This shows the blow up of the facility with the block wall shown, and then the tower itself with the antenna displays attached.
Okay, can we go back to the first one that shows like the actual lot?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at this, you mentioned that you like to put these on the outer edges of a property line so that it's easier to build around it. So why is this more the center versus an outer edge of the property?
Damien, that probably is a better question to be answered by you.
Yeah, and I believe the property line is hidden. Let me just I'm gonna pull up the set of plans on my end here, because I think I can see a little bit better on my end. Yeah, so that is where our equipment is shown, is on the north face of the property. Believe there's something else that's kind of blocking the property line, but you can see there's different APNs. So above you'll have 612.130.002. We're on 003 APN. It's kind of hard to see the outline, but it's directly abutting that northern property line.
Proposal as shown would be at the property line between the two APNs on the same property that is the subject of this. And to the point as question asked by the commissioner, that as earlier, this would is a future development opportunity. Well, we do see this typically where they're typically located at the edges of property, particularly if it's a larger property like this, to not forestall future development of the remainder of the property.
Okay, so it's just that the way this image looks, it looks like it's not on edge of a property line, but it is.
It is at the edge of the
Okay.
property line. I think, as Damien pointed out, that there's some line details that are maybe obscuring the actual property line.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because it's kind of deceiving on this image. Okay, and the other one, can we bring up the samples of the eucalyptus tree? Because I'd like you to point out to us which one exactly we plan to see there out of all those images.
Can you ask Matthew to bring the presentation back up? Damien, if you will help me, are you able to see this on your screen?
I am, yes.
Okay, so can you tell me where you want to stop to describe?
Yes, I think if you go before these, I think this is back one more. There we go.
Oops, sorry. Is this the
Yeah.
screen you're looking for?
That's correct. Yes. So yes, based on this screen and what I can see here, these are actually all mono pines. So these are all built to resemble a pine tree. Do we have the photo sims on this presentation?
I'm not aware of that. However, if you can give us a moment, we will pull up the file.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be the best representation of this tower. And as a suggestion, if I am able to share my screen, I can share the photo sims on my end as well.
We're going to give you permission to share screen, so hold on just 1 second.
Damien, you should be able to share your screen at this time.
Damien, are you still with us? Did we lose
Sorry,
you?
I was muted as I was trying to find my my screen share button, but yes, I will share shortly here. Give me 1 second. Okay, you should be able to see here now, after I scrolled a couple screens over, a view of our photo simulation.
Can all commissioners see what's on the screen?
Yes.
All right, so as you can see here, it's kind of, as opposed to a palm tree, we have more branching going along down the tower. So that would provide better screening for a future carrier. And we have a couple views here. I'll scroll through so each of you can see it from a couple different angles. It's a little bit further back. And one more here.
Just for the record, I think it does reference a 70-foot pole, but the actual proposal is for 65 feet. So just for purposes of public record, I'm just noting that.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's my last question for the applicant. Thank you.
Commissioner Valdez, do you have any other questions for the applicant?
No.
Commissioner Rodriguez Ceja via Zoom, do you have any questions for the applicant?
None for me.
Okay, I just have a couple quick questions, please, Damien. You said it's only going to be T-Mobile to start. If we do bring in other carriers, it would be up to 3 different carriers, correct?
Correct, yes.
And second and possible third carrier would just be added, still somewhere on the trunk line below the T-Mobile equipment and would still be shaded by all that foliage?
That's correct. And if there was a second or third carrier there, depending on their equipment, there might be an addition of branches, but generally,
Okay.
yes, they'll be below and screened by that foliage.
Mask the equipment as much as possible.
Right.
Okay. Also, I see the CMU block all the way around the property. And what will the material for the gate at the driveway be made out of? Will that be like a wrought iron rolling gate? Will it be chain link? How will that be secured?
And you're speaking about the gate to enter the property itself or to our equipment enclosure?
To the property itself.
You know, I don't know if I have that information offhand. I apologize. Let me see if I can pull it up on the plans. This may not be a part of our proposal if it's something the property might be handling on their own. I'll go based off the photo since for now it appears to be wrought iron.
Wrought iron, okay. Also at the same height that the 7 foot tall of the CMU block?
Again, I don't have the specifics on that because it's not necessarily a portion of our proposal. So I'm
Okay.
hesitant to say a specific answer on that. I
Okay.
apologize.
Thank you.
Oh, and you know what? I do see a detail here that's showing the existing CME wall at 8 feet 8 inches. And our proposed CME wall for our shelter is at 7 feet. So our shelter will actually be lower.
Okay, the interior wall around the equipment directly.
Correct.
And Chair, if I can add, the property, perimeter property fence facing Calhoun right now currently has wrought iron, white wrought iron. And that wrought iron includes the gated access.
Okay, next, Vanessa, do we have any public comments on this matter?
There were none.
Okay, seeing that there were none. Staff, is there any clarification, anything to review on?
No, Chair.
Okay. So at this time, I will close the public hearing and commissioners, do we have any further discussion amongst ourselves or?
All right, I'll start. I understand the need to, I want to have something up that we don't have 3 or 4 palm trees. We can do, 3 items on one device. I'm a little concerned of how it's going to look in the area because it's so different from anything else that we have out there. But at the same time, we all talk about in the environment and how we need to do more with less. So that is definitely a plus. But my concern is just that when it's put up, the foliage is full when it's done. Not that they wait to add other pieces, but it's definitely different. And I'm curious to see what the rest of the commissioners have to say. Thanks.
Commissioner Valdez, do you have any comments?
No.
Commissioner Rodriguez-Ceja, any comments on the matter? I believe you're muted.
Thank you. I believe that last rendering kind of cemented for me the way that I was observing this particular project. It seems to me that it would be too dramatically different, changing the landscape of that particular area. And I'm familiar with that particular area, and I feel that as we're thinking about development, because it's very much needed and projects that are coming in there, we should be thinking about the overall aesthetic and cohesion of what projects are being developed and set forth in that particular region that needs a lot of investment. So even though I'm, happy that there's interest to start a project there, it just seems that the type of form that the cell tower would take would be just too dramatic. And even though we cannot enforce the palm tree style, I just think if there is no willingness from the applicant to change it to that, or if it's going to, if it's more cost effective for the applicant to do it in that sense, to do the eucalyptus, it just doesn't, it doesn't fit in my opinion. So it just, that's my concern as of right now.
Thank you. My thoughts on the matter, I agree with Commissioner Franz that it is nice to be able to do more with less. As far as the aesthetic goes, I don't feel that even the palms don't really hide the equipment that well. I think the equipment's very obvious. I think that these eucalyptus designs do a better job of shielding that. And there are eucalyptus trees in Indio and some of the surrounding areas. Granted, they're not 60 eucalyptus trees, but I do know that there are some in our community. I personally do like the idea of it providing a little bit of a better cover for the equipment myself. And Commissioner Lopez has recused herself. So at this point, do we have any other deliberation, or would anyone like to make a motion to approve or? Of course.
So Kevin, I have a question for you. I'm assuming this has been discussed for a while. This project has been batted around for a while, right? And the community in that area, do we know if there is a shortage of coverage? Like, I'm assuming they wouldn't be putting one in there because the T-Mobile and stuff won't put them in if they don't need coverage in those areas. So I'm assuming that there is a need in the community for more cell tower cellular services, correct?
So, certainly Damon could speak to the specifics, but typically you're correct, Commissioner. Typically there is a service analysis done by the party coming in to determine areas of needed either new or enhanced coverage. Also, for different operators, they may have need for more coverage. So, for example, I'm speculating, but let's say the T-Mobile, which has been referenced, wanted to come in the area or wanted to enhance their coverage, may identify this location as an opportunity to provide a broad service area, both in the immediate surrounding area as well as areas further afield from the location. You are correct that this has been discussed. The eucalyptus was a discussion item with staff. We went back and forth with the applicant a little bit just because it was different, as has been pointed out. I do believe that the monopalm, which is encouraged by city code, does have different, as the chair pointed, does have different types of coverage than the eucalyptus, which may or may not be seen as beneficial by the commission. But yes, this is on a non-technical basis in terms of the analytics. It's very common for the analysis to be done, and that's why this particular location would have been deemed appropriate, because it has the opportunity for new or enhanced coverage.
Okay, my next question is, are there any other eucalyptus style cell towers in the valley that we know of?
Not that I know of. I know there are none in the city. I can't speak to any in the valley. Perhaps Damien could speak to that, but I'm not aware of any in the city of Indio itself specific.
Okay. If the applicant can answer that question, can we reopen the public hearing?
That's the public hearing, so the applicant can address Commissioner Franz's question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I unfortunately do not know if there's any other mono eucalyptuses in the valley. I could probably find that information with time, but I was not prepared to answer that question, and I don't have that information handy. I will say, in working through other jurisdictions, maybe not in the valley, and I know it's maybe a different aesthetic in the city, there's generally more positive feedback on the mono eucalyptuses once constructed than I would say on the mono palms or even pines, for example. They do tend to offer better coverage for the equipment than those other types of faux trees. But to answer your question, I'm not aware of any other mono eucalyptuses, not that there are not, but I just don't have that information offhand.
So, Damien, has your company, I'm assuming you've done cell towers for a while. How many have you done in the valley?
We've done a few, but yes, most in the valley would probably be monopalms or pines. But that's not to say, you know, we do a few for APC towers, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, other infrastructure developers have also built towers that maybe our company is not privy to that information. So we'll keep track of the towers that we build, but we're not necessarily keeping track of towers that some of our competitors or the carriers will be building directly.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may, I actually have a question that just popped into my head for the applicant since it's open for public comment. Mr. Ricardo, has there been any instances where you've approached a city previously with a design that wasn't, fitting into the aesthetic? And were you able to, still move that project ahead? Can you think of an instance when that has happened?
Yes, there's often instances like we had with the planning department, through this project, where there will be those discussions through the planning application process. And we often typically, we want to work with the city to have a design that works for city, the carriers, ourselves, and the community and the property owner. So yeah, I mean, we do take all of that into consideration, and we think about, the future of this, especially with our kind of business model on encouraging other carriers to come and co-locate. We want to ensure that we have a design that is suitable for future co-location. It only, it benefits us in that we can have that potential other carrier on our tower, but it also benefits the city and community that you're kind of limiting the amount of towers in the area.
And one more thing, actually, I know that Mr. Snyder shared that there's definitely been a study, I'm assuming your team put together to identify the location of where this tower could go. Have you considered other locations that are not going to have such a drastic impact to the landscape?
Yeah, so I'll go back into kind of history of how this area is presented to ourselves, APC Towers. We have a partnership with T-Mobile. They essentially provide us locations in which their service is lacking, either in coverage or capacity. And they'll give us a pretty small area, let's say a circle on a map, pretty small area to find a location to install a tower that's going to integrate into their network seamlessly. So the extent to which we'd explore outside of this location would maybe be less than a quarter mile in each direction. So essentially you're going to be looking to install a tower in generally the same environment. So I don't think a new location, let's say on property next door, would have much of a different impact than the location selected here.
And this is my last question. The willingness to put this particular style is so that it's available for add-ons later. Currently, you do not have any agreement with any other cell phone carriers that would guarantee that this will be utilized, maximized if we went with this style?
That is correct in that we do not have agreements with other carriers at this time. Again, our business model is to do that. So we will work with these other carriers and we have relations with them in which we'll market essentially this tower to those future facilities. And if they do see a need, then we hope that they will come and co-locate on this tower as well.
So just for clarification purposes, the monopalm would work currently for the provider that you do have signed on. If you did change the style to the monopalm, you would be essentially meeting the demand and pleasing your client. This is just for potential opportunities in the future.
One could argue that, yes, I would say so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for answering our questions. Does that clear anything up for commission? Would anyone like to
Chair, I might suggest we close the
Close.
hearing.
Okay, I'd like to close a public hearing, please.
I would actually like to ask another question of staff before we move on. So the request today is not only for the use, right? The ability to put a cell tower on this particular location. It is also for the design and style of the cell tower, correct? So we're almost approving like, is it two things or is it all or nothing?
So you're only approving the conditional use permit. Based on our current regulatory structure for wireless facilities, it's not typically subject to design review. Cities have very limited authority on the design based on federal regulations. So the actual item in front of you this evening is the use, the conditional use, so the use allowance. As part of that, the stealth design method, which is being proposed as the faux eucalyptus, is considered as well. But the actual design of facilities is typically, we have very limited authority under federal regulations. So the CMU block wall and the actual construction, that is not something that typically the commission would get into. So again, this evening, the conditional use permit.
Okay, so just to make sure I understand, city attorney, we're approving the conditional use permit. So would it be possible to add a condition that approves the conditional use but limits it to the monopalm design?
So if I understand correctly, you're asking if you could approve the conditional use of permit upon the condition that the design be a monopalm rather than the proposed eucalyptus.
That's my question.
I think theoretically you could do that. The motion and the proposed findings don't support that. What you can't do under federal regulations would be to unreasonably discriminate against providers of equivalent services. So amongst T-Mobile or somebody else, prohibit the effect of providing wireless services or in any sort of denial would have to be in writing supported by findings. That's my understanding of your question. Back to the kind of genesis in the code, my understanding is that this is a conditional use permit because the location it's sitting on is vacant property. Usually these projects often go through the administrative use permit route, but because this is vacant property, it is presented to the commission as a conditional use permit.
And if I could add to the city attorney, I do believe it's within the discretionary authority of the planning commission to specify design other than what is being proposed, because again, the way the current regulations are written, it encourages monopalm, but does not inhibit other designs. So as part of your conditional use permit consideration, you could modify the language that is currently in the resolution, as the city attorney said, to specify a design other than eucalyptus. Now, whether or not that works for APC towers, that is a separate question, but you are, I believe, as I think the city attorney said as well, acting within your discretionary authority if you want to modify the method of stealth design.
Correct. Yes, I believe you would just have to make findings appropriate to that and modify the language that if you are to alter what is proposed and the staff recommendation.
Okay.
So at this point, would anyone like to make a motion with any amendments to it, or where are we at, Kevin, if nobody's?
So the commission, if you fail to make a motion, then obviously that is the project will not move forward. The commission has two options. You can make a motion to adopt the resolution as presented. That would be consistent with the proposed faux eucalyptus stealth method design. If the majority of the commission wants to go with another design, such as the monopalm design, then you would need to, as the city attorney said, you would have to make findings as to the basis for that, as well as there are specifically in this resolution that do specify the faux eucalyptus. So you would have to make sure that we modify it, and the city attorney and I can assist you, the commission, in doing that, modify those conditions where the reference to the faux eucalyptus is in the resolution, so that it references correctly what the commission's design preferences as part of the conditional use permit consideration. And city attorney, if I've said it wrong or not clearly enough, please jump in.
No, I think those are accurate options that the commission has.
Just a quick question for our attorney. So would we be setting a precedent if we were to move with a motion of adopting the resolution with these conditions? Would we be then setting a precedent for any future cell towers that were coming into the area now? Because you mentioned earlier that we might be, in some form of discrimination against other carriers, and so I just want to make sure that if we move something forward, that we're not going to set something in stone that would then put us into liability in the future.
It wouldn't set any sort of legal precedent that subsequent application would have to be considered with the same condition. These are adjudicatory decisions that are based upon the commission. It would be known in public record that this sort of application was approved with X and X conditions, but I do not believe that there would be any sort of legal precedent requiring a subsequent application to be to include the same conditions.
Thank you.
Chair, can I have one additional clarification? So if the commission does decide to go with an alternate design other than the faux eucalyptus, quickly looking through it, it appears the only specific reference to the faux eucalyptus is on page 22 of 37, general condition of approval A1. So that would be the condition that you would need to specifically modify if you were so inclined to propose and take action on a alternate consideration. So we would just need to make sure that your motion, any motion adopting the resolution where there was a desire to have an alternate design would need to specifically reference a modification to that condition with a stated finding as to why that is being modified. Am I correct, City Attorney?
Yes, it would be something for the commission to consider as to creating a finding as to why you are recommending or conditioning the alternative design rather than the eucalyptus, proposed eucalyptus design.
Kevin, another question for you. As stated, a lot of these cellular towers do not come before us. So if it's being installed in a property that's already been developed, they just come to planning and you guys approve them, correct? So as Vice Chair Rodriguez has stated, if we approve this as a eucalyptus look and design, wouldn't that basically green light possibly for planning if another eucalyptus came to the planning desk? Because right now you look at them and you say everything's a monopalm, right? So it's just kind of the way it's been. So I know it isn't setting precedents legally, but wouldn't, I don't know why this is backfeeding, wouldn't kind of create that?
So I think the pattern to date has been from most carriers that or most companies that come in to propose these has been in the monopalm design. It's just been a business practice, if you will, on the part of them. For if this was being considered by staff in the future, I wouldn't say that we wouldn't consider it. I don't think as this, there is no legal precedent. Certainly, I think it would be somewhat situational depending on the surrounding area. For example, if this was being proposed in on a site where there was a group of palm trees, this might look out of character. If it was a eucalyptus design, we might want to stick with the monopalm design for overall consistency with the kind of the landscape environment. So I think it's hard to answer any way conclusively other than say we would look at it on a case-by-case basis and look at the characteristics of the properties being proposed on as well as the surrounding area and make a determination of appropriateness.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, Damien does have his hand raised. Is he allowed to speak once more, City Attorney?
Yeah, it would be up to the chair whether or not he would want to reopen the hearing.
Yeah, we can do that. I'd like to reopen the hearing and hear from Damien.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I just wanted to comment on the eucalyptus again and just reiterate our intent with it. You know, proposing a monopalm with our business model and our business practice is going to be very limiting to our business model to kind of acquire those secondary or tertiary candidates, carriers. So I just wanted to reiterate that, you know, this model uke is really helping us to limit the amount of towers in the area, condense it into one location. You guys have probably experienced it in the past. I don't know if you've had co-location on monopalms, but typically you're looking at installing now antennas below the existing fronds, and they're going to be extremely visible. You're almost essentially approving a monopole at that point. And because that is co-located, that is something as well that I don't believe that goes in front of the commission. So a second carrier on a monopalm might get approved administratively, where you might not have input on additional antennas that are now essentially unscreened.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question? Damian, since we're back on public hearing, let me ask you a quick question. You know, we all worry about resources in our environment. Is there, if you think about the amount of resources that it takes to install this eucalyptus tree versus a monopalm, and then if we wanted other carriers, you'd have to install another monopalm maybe, or some other type of device. Is there any type of environmental benefit to the eucalyptus tree versus the traditional monopalm?
I'm going to try to answer that question the best I can. I mean, number one would be space, right? You're taking up less space by having less towers and facilities. Number two, if you're speaking about materials, yes, we need less steel, for example, because you're now only building one pole as opposed to three. Same with the equipment area. You might, you know, have less CMU block walls or cement foundation with one facility as opposed to three. I don't know if that's kind of what you're getting at. You know, I guess there would be a slight benefit. I would say the biggest benefit of it is in terms of space and aesthetics of having less poles.
Thank you. At this point, we'll close the public hearing again.
Another question for staff. That
Through
particular,
my paces here.
I know, we've kind of lost our, we forgot how to do these meetings, right? So the area surrounding it, this is 65 feet tall. So whether it's a monopalm or a eucalyptus tree, it's really going to stand out. What is the tallest building in the surrounding areas, or what do we think that could possibly be built? Is there anything that's ever going to dwarf this at all a little bit in the future, regardless of which way we go?
In the immediate area, I'm just looking at Google Maps right now. Immediate area, you're looking at probably the tallest buildings are the two-story multifamily apartments across the street from this site. They're probably approximately eyeballing, and I'm going to say in the range of 22 to 24 feet tall. So it's significantly taller than that, although you do have existing date palms that are probably anywhere from 50 to 75 feet tall on that property and in the surrounding area because they're very mature.
Okay, thank you.
And those date palms you were speaking of are at the multifamily units across the street?
They are, yes. The majority of them are, and there are some immediately to the north of this property that are probably in the same height range, Chair, but they're a little bit further away than directly across the street as the ones I just referenced are.
And the majority of the buildings in that area on that side of the street are predominantly single-story kind of commercial units, correct?
They are primarily single story, a combination of commercial and or light industrial buildings. Typically, you're looking at maybe they might have roof heights of anywhere, say, I would say anywhere from 18 to 20 feet, but really no higher than that.
Chair, if I can just add a comment, I don't know if that's still
Of course.
possible if we're in deliberations. But I think that we're having a hard time. We're asking all these questions because we see the opportunity to meet a demand and a need within our community, but we also see that this is going to be a very big impact on this particular community, a community that we know tends to be low income, tends to have a lot of folks that hang out in that particular region, transients and such. And so I think that we really need to start considering when we start getting these types of applications, where are these types of projects being proposed? Is it they're being proposed across the board evenly in an equitable distribution across the city, or are they being targeted where we know that there are particular areas that might not be as visited by the larger community? And so I think that I just want to make sure that we are considering why we're having such a difficult time with this, and really think about what we would be doing to this particular community if we were to allow any of the styles, whether it be a palm tree, whether it be eucalyptus. And I would also like to consider, I think Commissioner Franz brought up a really good point. I think this would create an encouragement for future projects like this one, to say, well, if the one time it came up to the Planning Commission, they went ahead and moved with it, why not? So I just wanted to put that as a potential, as you're thinking about the decision that you will be making. These are the thoughts that I'm considering as I'm thinking about my decision.
If I could, Planning Commission, I just want to, and in no way taking sides in this, but I think the point should be noted. It was stated earlier that the eucalyptus is intended to be more screening, and this commission, not necessarily all the members, because some of these have occurred over time, but to give an example, I'm looking right now on Google Maps, there's 3 in a row cellular towers that were approved down by the Empire Polo Club. And if you've driven down there, you do see that the foliage or the faux foliage is at the top, doesn't completely screen in any way the equipment, and it does not necessarily provide a level of screening. Typically, stealth design, and it's hard with the monopalm design because it's not intended to be screening per se. So in terms of design considerations, certainly the eucalyptus, whether the commission decides, it will probably provide a higher level of screening, particularly if there's going to be multiple carrier considerations on that in the future. These particular ones, literally the only foliage is at the very top. There's nothing that goes down, and if there's anything added, there will be palms added for coverage, but it will not screen. So the eucalyptus is different, certainly. It is certainly something that has not common in our city and perhaps not even in the valley. But from a perspective of screening and stealthiness, it may be more covering than the monopalm has typically been and that you've seen as you drive around the community. I just want to share that perspective. Again, not taking sides, and certainly the commission's discretion on how you decide, but I think it is a different design aesthetic that I just wanted to point out.
Yeah, I'd like to add that I personally am not a big fan of the monopalm units that I've seen around the valley. I've noticed a few in Indio. I know there's a lot in Cathedral City and Palm Desert. I do like the fact that the eucalyptus looks a little bit more natural and hides the equipment. And if it can hide the equipment for up to possibly 3 carriers in the same space, more or less, as one single monopalm, I think that would be a benefit to that area of Indio.
So just to point out that at this point, then for any consideration, there is a need for a motion action and whatever. And then if you are going to propose an alternate, the city attorney and I can assist as needed to help you in developing the necessary findings and changes to the reference condition I stated earlier.
Yep.
Is it appropriate for chair to make a motion?
I can do it too if you want.
Okay.
Okay. All right, it's been a little while, guys, so I'm a little rusty. Let me make a motion to adopt resolution number 2008, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Indio to approve conditional use permit 21-07-1068, authorizing construction of a 65-foot tall wireless facility designed as a faux eucalyptus tree with an accompanying 7-foot high CMU wall enclosure within a vacant property, subject to the findings and conditions of approval, including therein, and determining that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairperson Isiano,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Seja,
No.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
motion carries 3-1.
Chair, can we ask for a brief 2 to 3 minute recess while we go grab the chairperson, the commissioner? And I'm also going to run and grab my battery, so I don't run out of gas here. My computer's about ready to go out.
Let's take a quick break.
just received another message that nothing is going
Oh, do
out
we need to
via
take a,
Zoom.
okay, do we need to take a break?
Yeah, let me just reach
Yeah.
out to Matt.
So Chair, if we could ask for a break while we deal with our technical difficulties, and we'll restart when those are resolved.
Certainly, we'll be taking a short break to address.
We're good.
I can hear you all now.
Okay.
Okay.
We're online.
Do we need to restate anything?
Yeah, I'd
or-
recommend we go back to the top of the item. Spare Director Snyder a couple words, hopefully, but just for full disclosure, make sure it's all.
And in full
all
disclosure, this is
available
like
online.
getting back on riding a bike for me, because typically, as you know, I was here supporting other staff. So this is good for me actually to get a little bit more practice. So I don't mind at all. Again, for the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. The item before you this evening is tentative parcel map 38241. This particular item proposes the subdivision of a existing 5-acre parcel in the southeast portion of our city. It proposes the subdivision of that 5-acre parcel into 2 parcels. Parcel 1 would be proposed at 2.01 gross acres, and parcel 2 at 3.02 gross acres. The specified purpose for the subdivision is for the sale, lease, or financing of 2 single-family residential parcels. And the Subdivision Map Dac does find that as part of the consideration of this subdivision of land, that it is found to be consistent with the adopted general plan, which is the Indio General Plan 2040 that was adopted on September 18th, 2019, that this commission assisted in as part of its recommendations to City Council. Per the General Plan 2040, this property is currently designated with a Desert Estates Neighborhood, or DEN, land use designation. This particular land use designation specifies a density of up to 1 dwelling unit per acre. The current zoning designation is Country Estates 2, CE2, which has a minimum lot size of 2 acres for each of the parcels. This is a copy of the proposed tentative parcel map showing the subdivision of the existing parcel. Again, this is all in the staff report that was provided to you previously. The project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. It qualifies under the CEQA guidelines, section 15315, minor land division, class 15. So therefore, there was no substantive CEQA analysis required. The lot sizes meet the minimum lot size requirements of the CE2 or Country Estates 2 zoning, which again is a minimum of 2 acres. The proposed density is 0.4 dwelling units per acre, which is below the up to 1.0 of the DEN general plan land use designation. So this table is your staff report contains substantive findings and conclusions of compliance with the Subdivision Map Dac. This is a summary table just addressing each of the areas for that findings are required. And the red check marks indicate that as documented in the staff report, there were positive findings for all of these required issue areas. So if from staff's perspective and conducting the staff report, preparing the staff report and conducting analysis for that, there is compliance with the Subdivision Map Dac. So in general, this project does comply with applicable regulations, both city and state. It does meet the standards and guideline. As a reminder, a tentative parcel map is a recommendation of the Planning Commission to City Council. So your action this evening, whether positive or negative, will be in the form ultimately of a recommendation to City Council. It will go to City Council for separate and subsequent consideration where they may take action to agree or other action that could include approving it if the commission was, for example, to recommend denial. So just a reminder. And then if it is ultimately approved, the tentative parcel map does not create the lots per se. That requires what's called a final map action, as many of the commissioners are familiar with, and that is ultimately action taken by the City Council. And then following that, it is ultimately recorded, and it is only then that lots are legally created. So we're kind of in the paper portion of this process, if you will, where the Planning Commission is making the initial recommendation to City Council. So with that, staff is recommending that you do adopt Resolution 2009, which would be a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending to the City Council that they approve the tentative parcel map 38241 and finding that it is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And when you do open the public hearing, know that both Mr. Kim and his consultant, Mr. Egan, are available to provide a presentation and answer any questions the commission might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? I have a quick question for staff. And we'll come back to Commissioner Rodriguez, say hi if he has any questions. So we're proposing that currently zoning allows 1 dwelling unit per acre, and we're proposing to change it to 0.4.
To clarify, the general plan designation, which is different from the zoning designation in this instance. So the general plan designation is desert estate neighborhood. That allows a maximum density of 1 dwelling units per acre. The country estates is the zoning designation that specifies that the minimum lot size be 2 acres. So based on both those factors, the density will be 0.4 dwelling units to the acre. So that is below the 1 point. So it's in compliance with the general plan, which is the primary consideration per the Subdivision Map Dac when you're considering the tentative parcel map. So it is in compliance with the density requirements of the general plan, and it is also in compliance with the lot size requirements of the current zoning designation.
So being 0.4 per acre, it would allow up to how many on the 2 acre parcel and how many on the 3 acre?
So the desert estate neighborhoods only allows 1 dwelling unit per parcel.
Okay.
So there will only be the opportunity to develop 1 dwelling unit per parcel. Now, I will caveat that similar to all lots in the city, subject to compliance with the city's adopted accessory dwelling unit regulations, if a single family residence was built, there would be the opportunity to add an accessory dwelling units, just like there is for other lots in the city once these lots are legally created.
Thank you. Okay. So at this point, we'll open the public hearing and ask the applicant to speak on their behalf.
Thank you, commissioners. My name is Benjamin Egan. I am the applicant's representative. My address is 42945 Mateo Street, Suite A, Indio, California. And the project is just simply, as has been very well presented on staff, to take a 5 acre parcel and to divide it into 2 lots for the development of 2 single family dwellings. That is not determined exactly what will be built yet, because this is only the subdivision. What is built will have to conform to adopted general plan and zoning. The intent of the developers or the applicant is to, I know one of them intends to build a house that he will personally reside in, and that's Mr. Kim. The second parcel may be developed on a spec home or sold to another user who wants to build a custom home on it. So we're available to answer any questions that the commission would have for us at this time. And as I said, the applicant, Peter Kim, is available as well if anyone wants to question him directly.
Do any commissioners have any questions for the applicant?
Sure, if I may.
Okay.
Yeah, has the applicant done any sort of similar projects like this where they intend to build, a home and sell the property? And I guess my question really is the intent of the additional separation. Is it for, is it generating, is it renting, is it, or is it to sell to completely different individual and have them develop their own home? And if this is something that they've, and if not, if the intent is to build something that could be rented out or leased, is this something that the applicant has done in the past in other sort of cities in Coachella?
So Peter Kim is available to directly answer his intentions. Basically, these 2 gentlemen have bought the land as partners. His intention is to take his parcel and develop a house on it. The other gentleman, I'm not sure what his intentions are. So I would limit my comments to the commission to simply stating that whatever they do, because all that's in front of you for consideration is allowing the division of the 5 acres into a 2 acre and a 3 acre lot respectively. My comments are simply limited to saying that anything they want to do would be subject to one of two things. They would be subject to the existing general plan and zoning, which would allow for construction of a single family estate. If they wanted to do anything else, they would have to come back to this commission again, and possibly even the council to get approval for that, which probably wouldn't even be allowed by the zone. So what I can tell you is their intentions can change. As I said, the one applicant, his intention is to build a house that he is going to reside in. The other lot, I'm not sure, but it would be a home that has to be developed pursuant to the zoning and under the regulations for land use and what's allowed to be done there that the city has currently adopted.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments?
Written comments were received for item 6.2. These comments have been distributed to the commissioners and posted online and made part of the agenda packet and public record for this meeting. However, we do have 2 public comments via Zoom. The
Okay.
first one I will bring on. April Sanders, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead and proceed with your public comment. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you,
Hello,
April.
I live south of this lot, and there has been an Airstream trailer on it until it was sold. There were 2 modular homes brought onto this lot. All of my neighbors and myself and my husband are very upset about this. We heard that Mr. Kim intended to rent these modular units out for Stagecoach and Coachella. We've already had multiple police incidents here in this neighborhood. Not at this property, but other properties. There's 2 verbos in here. And we're all very upset that we feel like this is going to be turned into like a motel. And there's currently a modular home on the south lot. There were 2. They removed one of them last week. There's also an all-terrain vehicle trailer on this lot, right behind my neighbor 2 doors down, right? That's what she looks at now out of her lot. And we're all very upset and really don't want this to go forward with being subdivided due to the fact that we feel that we're going to have a verbo behind us. And we've already, like I said, had multiple, there's been 5 parties here with over 100 people behind us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to me as well.
We have one more Zoom.
We
comment.
have one more. I haven't been able to get in touch with him. Mr. Richard Mahoney, are you available? Mr. Mahoney?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. If you could state your name for the record, you have
Yes,
3
my name
minutes.
is Richard Mahoney. I live on a neighboring property. And my concern is, as April has said, there have been numerous problems in the Los Palos and Zenda neighborhood. I understand that the 5-acre lots are able to be subdivided, and I don't have a problem with that per se, but I do have a concern about the intent. If there have been, as April said, there have been a lot of verbos or vacation rentals back there. I've personally had to call the Indio Police Departments many times. That community is located, it's an anomaly. That community is located through the Trilogy Polo Club community. It was built long before this community was developed, and they're landlocked, so they can only have access to their community through the Trilogy community. That creates a lot of traffic. My concern is that subdividing that lot is going to increase more traffic. The other thing is, when that development had been upgraded by Shea, who's the developer here at Trilogy, they put in the street, water, underground electric, gas, and communications. They did not put in sewers. There are no sewers, and I live right on the corner. The sewers lines ends at my house. So there are no sewers back there in that whole neighborhood. So everybody is on septic. My concern is, if they subdivide that lot into 2, then I believe, based on what I just heard about the one unit per acre, that could be subdivided again. At least each lot could be subdivided again, 1 into 2 more and 1 into 3 more. You could put 5 homes on a 5-acre property. If all of those are back there and they're on septic, everybody's back there on septic, and many are still on LP gas. So we have LP gas trucks coming through our well-developed community, going back there to a very primitive community. My concern there is, what is really the intent? If it's to grow party houses back there, that's really not a good plan. So I'll end my comments there. I understand that this is the issue here is whether the property should be subdivided. I understand I can't say more than that, but my concern is, after the subdivision, then what planning process has to get approved for anybody to go through and further subdivide or develop? Will there be minimum square footage requirements on the dwellings, et cetera, et cetera? How many ADUs? Those auxiliary dwelling units, I understand they're legal in California, but those things could be a nuisance in a community like ours. I'll end my comments here.
Thank you, sir, for your comments.
There are no more comments.
No more comments? Okay. Would the applicant like to address any of those concerns?
I would. I can appreciate the concerns of the neighbors. I would point out we're proposing the division. That's all that'll happen with this particular action, is a recommendation to adopt from the Planning Commission to adopt staff's findings and recommendations and move this forward to the council, or not a recommendation that they don't do that. What will be developed here will have to be considered another time. It would have to be submitted through the correct process. So if it's a single family home, if it's an ADU, I'll leave it to my esteemed colleague, the community development director, to answer the planning commissions on that. He's much more astute on those things. But one of the concerns I just have about some of what was raised is, if I had parties going on next to my house, because I'm an Indio resident as well, I would not be happy about it. I see that as an enforcement issue, though. I don't know the exact rules that have to do with vacation rentals in the city of Indio, because I've never looked into them. If there's issues with that, the council may want to look at their ordinances that regulate those. It may be an enforcement issue. I'm not sure that this is the venue to discuss that, though. We're looking for approval of a subdivision that is in compliance with the general plan and the zoning. So that would just be my response to that, is that I just want to make sure that my applicant's project doesn't become the targeted venue for a discussion that it sounds like may need to happen.
Okay, thank you. So at this point, we will close the public hearing and deliberate amongst ourselves. Any commissioners like to start?
Just a comment, Kevin, this council has just, did they just finish redoing the short-term rentals, or is that something that's still under discussion?
So the city council just approved an ordinance amending the short-term rental regulations, specifically focusing on particular areas of impact, noise, size of the number of attendees that can be at a particular piece of property. That ordinance was approved at the previous council meeting, last council meeting, will go into effect at the end of actually in January. So yes, and just to remind the commission, you've had the issue of short-term rentals in front of you before when you're considering projects. You and the assistant city attorney can weigh in on this from a legal perspective, but you're limited in your authority of consideration for that. But I will note a couple of things. One, The city does have a short-term rental ordinance. A property that does want to be considered for short-term rental has to apply for and receive a permit and is subject to compliance with all relevant standards contained in that ordinance. So your action this evening and or subsequent action by the city council does not automatically result in a short-term rental situation. The property would have to be authorized for that. There have been some references made to activities going on this property, and I can note for the record that there has been code enforcement investigations on that. And I do believe that the property owner has been complying with the code enforcement staff in terms of some concerns noted. Accessory dwelling units were referenced, and just for the record, it's important to note that in the state of California, local governments have almost no authority to limit accessory dwelling units, as this commission is well aware. So the city cannot inhibit nor prohibit accessory dwelling units, and in point of fact, neither can homeowners associations anymore. So the provision of accessory dwelling units with future single-family residential development of these properties, as long as it's consistent with the adopted standards the city has, which again are very limited. They are particularly around the size and of facilities and both in terms of accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. The final thing is I just want to clarify, because there was some concern about potential further subdivision of the property. For the property is Country Estates 2, which, as I mentioned earlier, has a minimum lot size of 2 acres. So if this tentative parcel map goes forward from the commission to the council and action is taken by the council to approve it, the minimum lot sizes are 2 acres. So as proposed by the applicant, you have 2.01 acres for one parcel and 3.02 for the other parcel. So from a compliance perspective with zoning, they comply. And so in that instance, the minimum finding of compliance with zoning and the minimum finding of compliance with general plan, staff does find that the proposal is compliant with both.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to let the public know that the city council had taken some steps, and we understand the concerns when it comes to short-term rentals and the impact on the quality of life on the neighborhoods. So thank you for that. That was my only comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Rodriguez Ceja, any comments?
No, I just appreciate the clarification from Mr. Snyder now. I think it's a really helpful, particularly for the things that were raised.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? No? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 2003?
Sure. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
Pardon if I may interrupt. I believe there might be a typo here in the recommendation. I believe it's actually resolution 2009 in the agenda packet. Just for clarification.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, let me try this again. I'd like to submit for approval resolution number 2009, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Indio, California, recommending that the City Council approve the tentative map parcel number 38241 TPM 21-09-412 to subdivide a 5-acre parcel of land into 2 single-family residential parcels to be located at Los Palos Drive between Zenda Drive and Avenue 52, and determined that the project is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, Section 15315, minor land divisions, assessor parcel number 779-100-028.
Do we have a second?
I'll make second.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Asiano,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Ceja,
No.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item. We have public hearing 6.3, tentative tract map number 31689, Second Amendment, TTM-4-1-398, Amendment 2. Joseph Rabani with Global Investment and Development. The applicant has filed an application for Second Amendment to tentative tract map number 31689 to reflect the construction of the North Indio Channel constructed by Coachella Valley Water District and relocation of the north entrance to align with Rancho Los Cerritos Drive. Kevin, can we please have a staff report?
Yes, can I have the PowerPoint? Great, thank you. As the chair indicated, this is an amendment to an existing tentative track map, and it's resulting from some actions pertaining to the construction of the North Indio Channel by the Coachella Valley Water District and the relocation of an existing entrance to align with another street section. So just to orient the commission, some of you may be familiar with this project site. It's been referred to as España. It is in northwest corner of the city. It actually has some development on it already. So a limited number of lots were developed. And then ultimately, this property has been, at least the first portion of this property has been acquired by Lennar Homes for building out an initial 50 lots with additional 60 option for 65. So this action, again, is intended to do some cleanup work based on actions that have taken place associated with the project. As a reminder, España is a total of 318 single-family lots, and we will the proposed map would include 3 new retention basins to replace the basin flood area that was removed due to the construction of the North Indio Channel by Coachella Valley Water District, and also consolidate the Coachella Valley Water District well site into a larger well site. And then, as I indicated, the relocation of the north entrance to the project to align with Rancho Los Cerritos Drive to the immediate north. So in this vein, this is fairly straightforward from staff's perspective. This is, for lack of a better word, some cleanup activities that will address some, again, actions by Coachella Valley Water District and also better align the north entrance drive. So in that vein, staff is recommending to the commission that you adopt resolution number 2004, recommending to the City Council the Second Amendment to Tentative Track Map 31689 that again would address the changes I've already mentioned. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission might have. The applicant's representative is in the audience this evening, along with the applicant is available virtually. So happy to answer any questions before you open the public hearing. Thank you.
Okay. Before we open the public hearing, any questions for staff? Okay, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite the applicant to present anything that they'd like to note to the commission.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and staff. Rob Bernheimer. We're just here to answer any questions, although I will say it's nice to be here in person. I've done so many of these meetings on Zooms. It's great to get back to the personal touch, but the project engineer, Jeff Anderson, as well as Joseph Ravani are on Zoom to also answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay, any public comments?
There were none.
Okay. So being that there's no public comments, I don't need to open.
The hearing's open.
Okay.
There sounds like there were no comments submitted and no one attempting to submit a comment online now. So you could close the hearing.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and commissioners, do we have any discussion or would anyone like to make a motion on this?
Come on, Jackie, your turn.
Okay, I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2004, resolution in the Planning Commission of the City of Indio, approving Second Amendment to Tentative Track Map number 31689, and Amendment 2 to reflect the construction of North Indio Channel constructed by the Coachella Valley Water District and relocation of the north entrance to align with Rancho Los Cerritos Drive. Keep reading on. For the 318 single family lots with a minimum lot of 7,000 square feet on a 86.48 acre property that will be recorded as part of phase 2 of the project.
Thank you. Do we have a second from anyone?
I'll second.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Chairperson Isiano,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Ceja,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz.
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along to 6.4 tentative parcel map number 38238. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, just waiting for the PowerPoint to come up. Okay, good evening. For the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. This item, as referenced by the chair, is a new tentative parcel map. And I'm just going to give you a brief staff report. The applicant is available this evening to answer any questions following the staff report. So the property in question, as indicated on the aerial map and outlined in red, is a 6.94 acre parcel located at 37600 Goodman Road, and that's on the north side of Avenue 38 between Dune Palms Road and Goodman Road, east of Adams Street. So the proposed subdivision would create 4 single-family residential parcels and a common lot. The new parcels would range in size from 1 acre to 2 acres. Again, the specified purpose of the subdivision is for the sale, lease, and financing of 4 single-family residential lot. Subdivision Map Act does require that conformance with the general plan be found. This particular property has a current General Plan 2040 land use designation of Desert Estates neighborhood, which again, as stated in the earlier project, allows for up to 1 dwelling units per acre. And the current zoning designations, I apologize, I think that's actually an error. It's equestrian estates. I think I made an error there, so let me just double check that. Yes, it's equestrian estates, which does have a minimum lot size of 2 acres. So similar to the other one, but it's equestrian estates rather than country estates too. So my apologies for the error in the PowerPoint. This is the proposed tentative map, and the table to the right shows you the breakdown of the lots. Again, there is a remainder, so each of the lots, there's 4 lots that of various sizes, all meeting excuse me. I apologize. I erred in saying earlier, it's a maximum density under the zoning of 2 dwelling units per acre. So in this instance, it's in the equestrian states, it's not a lot size, it's a maximum density. So I apologies, I stated that in error. But again, this tentative parcel map is broken down into the 4 lots of various acreages. There is a private street, which is referred to as Lot B, and then the remainder of the lot will be a regional flood control area that will be purchased by the Coachella Valley Water District and will be for purposes of regional flood control. The project is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. It meets the exemptions for minor land division, class 15. The lot sizes do meet the minimum EE lot size requirements, and even more important, they meet the maximum density. The proposed density is 0.58 dwelling units per acre. So it's consistent with the DEN general plan land use designation, and is also consistent with the equestrian estates. So with that, staff did review and conduct substantive analysis of compliance with the Subdivision Map Act. And as indicated in the summary table, did find that for all the required findings, the project did comply with the Subdivision Map Act. And so with that, staff is recommending adoption of resolution number 205, recommending to the City Council the approval of the tentative parcel map 38238 that would subdivide the 6.94 acre parcel into 4 single-family lots, residential parcels, excuse me, and also would find that the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. And with that, happy to answer any questions the commission might have. And again, the applicant's representatives and the applicant are available to answer any questions during the public hearing portion. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions for staff? Okay, being that there's no questions, I'd like to open the public hearing and invite the applicant to speak, should they wish.
Andy, would you like to provide any comments to the commission?
Good evening. Actually, my name is Veronica. I'm Andy's wife. Andy had to step away to pick up our kids, but I'm here, and this was a property that was purchased by family, my husband's sister, and myself and my husband's parents, and we're looking to divide it into 4 different properties.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? Do we have any public comments?
There were none.
Okay, no public comments. Thank you very much to the applicant. We'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, do we have any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Just a quick question. Kevin, I was looking at the map and there doesn't seem to be, I mean, there's properties, I guess, to the east, if I've got this map up right. And then there's some industrial. So there's a lot of open space out there, right? Am I seeing it's very underdeveloped?
That is correct.
Okay, and again, just to clarify, you went kind of back and forth on those numbers, just I want to make sure we're right here. It meets both the DEN and the equestrian.
It does. My apologies. This is what happens when you try to create a PowerPoint from another PowerPoint. Little trade secret here. Yes, the DEN and the equestrian estate development standards, which in this instance are density based,
Right.
it does comply with both. So it is compliant in terms of meeting the minimum and maximum standards of both.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Are we able to pull up the slide that has a map showing the different lot divisions?
Yes, just give us 1 second here. Let me go back. Is that the one you're looking for, Commissioner?
Yes. So question being is if the 4 lots are going to be fronting on Dune Palms Road. Is that where the 4 lots will be divided? And then at the end of it, at the back end is the larger lot that yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So.
And there will be a lot B as referenced in the table that will be the private street access to the 4 lots.
Okay, private street. Okay, so they're going to access it through the private road and not through Dune Palms?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments, or would anyone care to make a motion on this?
Okay, I will give it a shot. Let's see, approve resolution number 2005, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Indio, California, recommending that the City Council approve the tentative map number, parcel map number 38238, TPM 21-08-411 to subdivide a 6.91 acre parcel of land into 4 single-family residential parcels located at 37600 Goodman Road, California 92203 on the north side of Avenue 38 between Dune Palms Road and Goodman Road, east of Adams Street, subject to the findings and conditions of the approval therein, and determine that the project is exempt from the requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, Section 15315, minor land divisions, assessor parcel number 691-040-005.
Do we have
I
a
will second.
Thank you, Commissioner Seha. Okay, can we have a roll call, please?
Chairperson Isiano,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Seja,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Next item, 6.5, Shandy Square Conditional Use Permit 21-07-1069 and Design Review 21-07-489.
Chair, if I may, I think that that 6.5 on the current agenda would be the general plan amendment item.
Okay. I was going off the previous copy. Okay, 6.5 is the general plan amendment, housing element 2021 to 2029. Mr. Snyder.
Great, thank you. For the record, Kevin Snyder, Director of Community Development. I had some opening remarks, and then I do have both Elizabeth Dixon and Erica Van Sickle with Dudek, our consulting firm, who have been before both the Commission and City Council previously, and they're going to lead you through a presentation this evening. But just a couple of opening remarks. First, I want to remind the Commission that the housing element is a required element of the city's general plan. It is, we were required to plan for it every 8 years. We have a current housing element in effect that is 2013 to 2021 as the planning period. We have the new housing element that we'll be discussing this evening, which is would be in effect from 2021 to 2029. Housing element addresses a major consideration for the city in terms of what is called the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. You've heard these numbers before: 7,812 housing units that we have to plan for, of which 2,963 have to be affordable. And the reason why I want to make that statement is that this is something that we are mandated by the state to do. A housing element is mandated. If we do not have a certified housing element by the state of California, specifically the Housing and Community Development Department, there are significant repercussions for the city. It used to be I could say that and not really work. Those days are gone. They have made it quite clear, HCD has made it quite clear that they will actively pursue actions against cities that could include lawsuits that do not go through a process of getting a certified housing element. Unfortunately, when we got those numbers I just mentioned, we got them from the Southern California Association of Governments in October of 2020, which didn't leave us a lot of time to plan. Because we have an existing certified housing element, we get a little bit of a buy, which means that we technically should have our plan adopted by October 2021, but we get an extension to February of 2022. After that, that potential for action by HCD is something that we could seriously face. So it is important to note that this is something that both the Commission and Council, there is a certain sense of urgency to have this adopted. That certainly doesn't mean that you have to take action until you're ready, but it is to make you cognizant of the time sensitivity of this action. And the final point I want to make, and I'm sure Elizabeth and Erica will get into it further, so the housing element is in many ways pro forma. We have to address certain things. So every housing element in the state kind of looks alike. Our data may be different, our proposals may be different, but the format is pretty similar. What that means is that we may not address everything the Commission wants to address. We may not be able to address everything that the public wants to address in terms of what the hopes are for what the city can do, particularly in the area of affordable housing. But there's another bite at the proverbial apple, and that will come after this housing element activity is done before City Council, because we have a state grant that is funding this work. And that state grant is broken into two parts. The first part is the housing element, and the second part is what we're calling pro-housing strategies. And that is going to be an opportunity for the Commission, the Council, and the community to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of what can the city do to actively encourage housing, not only affordable housing, but with an emphasis on affordable housing, and what strategies, whether they be regulatory or financial. So if yourselves or the public are a little bit frustrated that maybe the housing element doesn't go as far as you might want it to, there is another bite at the apple. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth and Erica. Hopefully I haven't stole too much of their thunder, but they're going to lead you through a presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions before you open the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Just one moment while I share my screen. All right, I think we are all set. All right, so good evening, everyone, and planning commissioners. My name is Erica Van Sickle, and I'm here today with my colleague, Elizabeth Dixon. We're members of the Dudek consulting team, as Kevin Snyder just mentioned, and we've been working very closely with city staff to prepare an amendment to your general plan. So we're here tonight to support city staff in presenting the general plan amendment relative to the housing element and the associated CEQA documentation. So just a quick overview, we'll start with the introductions, provide an overview of the project, then take a look at the housing element components, the outreach we completed as part of the update, and the goals, policies, and programs, and then pause for any remaining questions. So in addition to myself and Elizabeth from the DUDEC team, this project's being led by staff from the city's Community Development Department, including Director Kevin Snyder, Layla Navar, and Jesus Gomez. So today we're bringing before you an amendment to the general plan, which is the document that states the overall vision for how the city should grow and develop over time. It sets out policies for the various elements of the general plan, and this is an amendment to update the city's housing element as required for the 6th cycle period, which is from 2021 to 2029, and an initial study and negative declaration in accordance with CEQA. So staff's recommendation tonight is that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council adopt the housing element as well as certify the negative declaration pursuant to CEQA. So the housing element is an element of the general plan, which is required to be updated every 8 years. And we're entering the 6th required iteration of the housing element, which we refer to as the 6th cycle. So the housing element contains a set of goals, policies, and actions to address the comprehensive housing needs of all the current and the anticipated residents at all income levels during the cycle. So just a quick overview of the components. The housing element update is an extensive planning process. It consists of several stages. The stakeholder and community engagement goes on throughout the update process, and that's why it's listed first. Then we review the previous housing element and update all the background documentation, including a needs assessment, which provides a profile of the demographic and housing related data in the city, an analysis of fair housing, which looks at fair housing through outreach, enforcement, land use patterns, and any disproportionate needs that may exist, and an analysis of the city's regulations and governmental and non-governmental constraints, again, that may exist to development. And so we conduct an inventory of the city's lands through the sites analysis to demonstrate that the sites are available to accommodate the housing, to ensure that the capacity exists for development to meet the city's needs. And the final housing element consists of an action plan that contains the goals, policies, and programs, which are recommended actions to be taken over the course of the next 8 years to assist the city in meeting the housing need. And so this slide might seem familiar, but just as a quick review on what the goals, policies, objectives.
Erica, can I interrupt? Yeah. Can you speak a little louder?
Yeah.
We're having, the volume is not coming through as clearly. So if you could speak up, please.
Sure. Is this better if I hold the microphone?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I'll hold it here. Don't mind my hand. And so, as I was saying, just a quick review on what the goals, policies, and objectives and programs are. This slide might seem familiar, but just to reiterate how they are related to each other. So starting from the top, goals, provide the long-term vision and serve as the foundation of the plan itself. They're broad statements of what the city and its residents hope to achieve over time. So policies are statements that guide decision-making to implement the goals. And objectives are specific and measurable action-oriented statements that mark progress towards the goal. Programs are the specific implementable actions that carry out the policies. And so these are the actions that you will see being taken over the next 8 years. And so just taking a quick look at our RHNA numbers, which I know, we talk about quite often. So there's a few ways that we can plan for the RHNA, also known as the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. First, we look at the projects that are in the permit pipeline and are expected to receive a certificate of occupancy during the planning period. Then we look at capacity on vacant sites. And finally, if we don't have enough sites identified to capture the RHNA on vacant sites, we look at sites that are developed but are ideal for redevelopment. They're also referred to as underutilized sites. And so just taking a quick look at the numbers, I think that Kevin had mentioned previously, the RHNA for the city, it was a total of 7,812 units that the city must plan for during the next 8 years. And I'll dive into the note in just a moment. But just as a note, the 7,812 does not include a buffer that is recommended by the state. And so as previously mentioned, one of the key components of the housing element does include the sites analysis and inventory. And while the city is not responsible for building the housing, cities must make sites available for housing in a manner that makes the RHNA targets possible during the cycle. So as I mentioned, the RHNA allocation is 7,812 units. However, with the recommended 15 to 30% buffer for the lower and moderate income RHNA, which is needed to ensure that there's enough capacity throughout the cycle, we also need to plan for additional lower and moderate income units. And one thing to consider and keep in mind is that there are specific criteria that sites must meet to qualify to meet the lower income RHNA. So if development comes in at a density lower than what has been identified for any one of the sites that qualify for lower income, the city would quickly have an issue with capacity, which is why the buffer is so important. And so just looking at the screen, very broadly, two of the large criterias are that sites must be between 0.5 and 10 acres to facilitate housing affordable to lower income households, and they must have a default density of at least 20 dwelling units per acre, as dictated by the zoning and the general plan. And so just quickly taking a look at the map here, that we've seen before, but it has all the vacant and underutilized sites identified, and I'll break down all the numbers on the next slide. So, we've talked a lot about capacity, but let's get into what the numbers look like in the final plan. So when you factor in the pipeline projects, which are projects that are, residential projects already in the pipeline for the city, and a projection of ADUs to be developed, and vacant and underutilized capacity, you end up with 9,859 units towards the above moderate income RHNA of 3,534, 661 units towards the moderate income RHNA, and 677 units towards the lower income RHNA of 2,963. So as shown here, under the existing zoning regulations, the city does not have the capacity to accommodate the lower and moderate income RHNA. And this is because currently only the downtown specific plan allows for the default density I mentioned of 20 dwelling units per acre. However, because the city is currently in the process of updating its zoning ordinance, a new total capacity was calculated based on the updated zoning regulations and the adopted general plan land use designations. And so this new capacity after the sites will be rezoned will provide an additional capacity of 3,160 lower income units and 947 moderate income units. And so, additional moderate income units. And so once we factor in the qualifying sites from the rezone, you end up with a very generous buffer of 874 lower income units and 293 moderate income units. So just as a note, because the zoning code was not adopted before the deadline of October 15th, a program was included in the housing element that does commit the city to making these sites available. And so speaking of programs, I will now hand it over to my colleague Elizabeth for a review of the outreach conducted and to dive into those goals, policies, and programs that I've briefly mentioned.
And Elizabeth and Erica, before you jump into that, I want to clarify something. The reference to rezone, that is specifically based on the work that we're doing that we've talked about with you several times in the past on updating our zoning regulations to align with the general plan. So it's not that we're going out and rezoning property citywide. We're actually amending the zoning regulations to align with the general plan. So in doing that, because we, as Erica stated, we didn't have that adopted by October 15th, we will plan to have that adopted hopefully in, I would say, early to mid 2022. At that point, then the compliance that she talked about would be in effect. So I didn't want you or the commission or the public to have a perception that somehow we're going out and rezoning the city. We're just aligning the zoning with the already adopted general plan, because as you know, right now, we're out of alignment with our current zoning that was adopted in some instances over 25 years ago, and the general plan that was adopted 3 years ago.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin.
Perfect. Thank you, Kevin.
We're repeating each other. Okay, well, I'll get us moving on here. I'm just going to provide a brief summary of the outreach that was conducted for this update, and then I'll get into the details of the goals and programs of the housing element. So extensive public outreach was conducted throughout the planning process. In addition to an online survey that was available in English and Spanish, and 2 city council and planning commission meetings, the city held 3 public workshops with live translations in Spanish, 1 stakeholder community meeting, which was open to the public and to community stakeholders, and a total of 8 individual and small group stakeholder interviews, which were also open to all members of the public. The city also mailed a flyer to all households in Indio with information for the public meetings in both Spanish and English. And the city promoted the meetings and public review opportunities on a webpage that was dedicated to the project, and also through an email newsletter for interested parties, and on the city's social media platforms, which also included live streaming of the meetings on to Facebook. Appendix F of the housing element provides a detailed summary of the outreach conducted and the feedback received. And the results of all of this outreach that was conducted, they were carefully considered in the preparation of the housing element itself, particularly as it relates to the goals, policies, and programs, which I'll now take us through. So the housing elements programs focus on 6 main goals, which are shown here on the screen, and I'll walk you through them. First, an adequate supply and diverse range of housing types that align with the needs of all households. Next, an affordable housing supply that meets the needs of extremely low, very low, low, and moderate income households. A well-maintained and preserved housing stock. Rental and ownership housing opportunities for all income levels. Enhanced quality of life free from displacement, and a city that promotes equality and inclusivity. Now I'll go into detail on the programs of the housing elements, and the programs are the steps that the city should take throughout the housing element cycle to achieve these greater goals and to help the city achieve their RHNA targets. So the programs of the housing element, they do include many ongoing efforts. So like Kevin and Erica both mentioned, the zoning code update, because programs such as this, they're anticipated to be completed housing element. So it will be an easy way to start showing that you are implementing and making progress towards your housing element. Additionally, many programs of the housing element are included in response to recent legislative changes, as the state has been very active over the last 4 years in adopting legislation as it relates to housing. So what we have here, we have programs to provide an adequate supply and variety of housing types. These programs include updates to the density bonus program in response to changes in state law, where additional incentives beyond those required could be considered. An update to the city's development fees, which can include an evaluation of opportunities to reduce fees in exchange for affordable housing development. An update to the zoning code to increase flexibility in development standards for residential uses and to accommodate the RHNA and the buffer through the densities identified in the 2040 general plan. So making sure that you're conforming with your general plan. An incentive for lot consolidation is needed to facilitate the development of affordable housing, especially for those sites downtown. Many of those sites are smaller than the 0.5 acres that Erica discussed. And on those sites that were identified in the last 2 housing element cycles and are being re-identified, a program is also needed to allow by right development where 20% or more of those units will be affordable. And like I mentioned, the state has been very busy as it relates to new legislation. So a lot of these programs you see, they are related to those legislative updates, and these specifically are aimed to help meet the varying needs of the population. So the first program listed is related to accessory dwelling units. This includes needed updates for the provision of accessory dwelling units, resources to assist homeowners with the development of accessory dwelling units, and an incentive for the development of ADUs that may be made affordable to lower income households. Forgive my acronym, ADU, I mean accessory dwelling units. Next here we have emergency shelters, and these must be permitted by right in at least one zone. And then also parking requirements must ensure that they are calculated based on the demonstrated need to accommodate the staff. The employee and farm worker housing program, this ensures that employee housing is permitted with the same regulations as single family residences in the same zone. Supportive housing, meeting specific requirements, it must be permitted in residential and mixed use zones. Low barrier navigation centers, these connect people experiencing homelessness with support programs, and they do need to be incorporated into the zoning code. Large community care facilities serving 7 or more persons, these need to be permitted in at least one zone without discretion. And housing on religious sites, this provides a process by which religious institutions can receive parking reductions in exchange for housing. So essentially building affordable housing on their parking lots. And that was really related to the YIGBY movement that has related to updates to existing processes and ongoing monitoring throughout the planning period include the provision of permit streamlining for qualifying projects under SB 35. So this is more legislation from the state.
Elizabeth,
Ensuring,
sorry,
yes.
but you froze for a second. So, okay, there, you just moved it along. Thank you.
Okay, I can start back over with this slide if that works.
I think you're fine. It's just the slide hadn't progressed yet. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so SB 35, ensuring that relevant development requirements are provided online and are updated as needed just to ensure transparency. Under state legislation, there's a list of specific documents that must be required and up to date on the city's website. A survey of the housing stock to determine the condition of the housing in Indio. This is something that the Code Enforcement Division is going to be taking on. Continued pursuit of grant applications to identify funding to support affordable housing production. Continue to track the capacity for housing throughout the planning period to ensure no net loss of capacity. And this is where that buffer really comes into play to make sure that you don't run into any issues with a net loss of capacity as it relates to your remaining RHNA target throughout the planning period. Replacement requirements in the event that a property is redeveloped. This is similar to those replacement requirements that you see in density bonus law. And then monitoring new design standards just to ensure that they are objective. This is a new requirement for new design standards. All right, programs related to housing assistance for households. They include housing rehabilitation. The city provides housing rehabilitation support to eligible residents through the current minor home repair program. And this program of the housing element sets out to seek new funding to support this program even further. The Housing Choice Vouchers program, this just commits the city to continuing to participate in this program and to coordinate with the Housing Authority. And then homeownership opportunities coordinates with developers and housing nonprofits to explore opportunities for creative ownership models and for affordable ownership development. It's not a development that we see a lot of, but there are examples that exist out there. So really reaching out to nonprofits and developers who can help make that possible within the city. All right, and then programs that increase housing opportunities for all the population and increase quality of life. They include increased accessibility for those with disabilities, and this really aims to connect developers and residents to accessibility resources such as home retrofit guides and even universal design standards that can increase in-unit accessibility, among other related resources. Reasonable accommodations. This is to ensure a procedure is provided in the event that a deviation from existing regulations is needed to meet the needs of those with disabilities. Preservation of at-risk affordable housing. This includes collaboration with the Housing Authority and the Coachella Valley Housing Coalition. Consideration for the establishment of a housing trust fund. This this provides an opportunity for the city to really start to have that conversation about looking at opportunities to increase access to state and federal grants and to start to collect and allocate funds for affordable housing. Through this program, the city can really explore what funding sources may be available. And then the next one that's tied in with this Housing Trust Fund, an analysis to look at the feasibility of inclusionary zoning. So this could potentially serve as a funding stream for affordable housing that could be paired with the Housing Trust Fund. And then the last one here, place-based strategies. These would prioritize planning efforts in a manner that advances fair housing access and opportunity for upward mobility. All right, and I know it's a lot of information. This is the last slide on the programs that I'll take you to. Programs to increase coordination and partnerships include annual housing forum, where the city can discuss the progress made toward the housing element through discussion of the annual progress reports. These are reports that are already required, and under new legislation, they are required to be brought before a decision-making body, and this could be a great opportunity for the city to take advantage of this to provide an annual housing forum. Fostering partnerships, and this is really incorporated throughout the housing element through several programs to really identify opportunities for increased coordination among agencies and organizations. Providing information on available resources and programs online to better connect residents to what is available. Education on fair housing and accessibility. This is also included throughout the housing element and can be paired with the annual housing forums, for example, and resources can be provided on the city's website. And then continuing to partner with the Inland Fair Housing and Mediation Board for fair housing services and providing those referrals to the mediation board. All right, so that was a lot of information. I'm going to wrap things up with next steps and then we'll close things out. The final steps within this process are listed here, and Kevin touched on this earlier, but we have incorporated comments received during the public review period and through the State Department of Housing and Community Development's review, so HCD's review, and we've finalized the draft housing element, which is what is before you this evening. We're here tonight requesting your recommendation to the City Council to adopt the general plan amendment for the housing element and to certify the initial study negative declaration pursuant to CEQA. And upon that recommendation, we would then bring the draft housing element and the initial study negative declaration to the City Council for adoption and certification of the CEQA document. And then finally, once the housing element is adopted, it would go back to HCD for their review and final certification. And that process can take up to 90 days. One thing to note is that HCD, they only certify an adopted housing element. So these are just kind of the steps in the process. So that's all we have for you tonight. We look forward to hearing your questions and comments, and we're here. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. Commissioners, do we have any questions for staff?
I do. Chair,
Thank you.
if I may. I was looking into some of the program's recommendations, and I wanted to ask, you know, what did you use to determine the timeline? I know that some programs are set forward to happen year 1, year 2, ongoing. So I wanted to have a better understanding, because I think that there are a few programs there that could, or that might, you know, be good for us to start doing maybe year 1, or that give me the sense that we need some sort of urgency. So I wanted to better understand what went into the identifying the timeline for each proposed program.
So I'll make an initial comment, then I'll turn it over to Erica and Elizabeth. So there's several factors that go into that. One is certainly the ability to resource the program activities and based on available resources. So when I was reviewing these and speaking with Elizabeth and Erica, along with Jesus Gomez and Leila Namvar, that was taken into factor, Vice Chairperson. And then certainly there are things that rise to a level of prominence in terms of actions that we must take to continue progress. One of the differences, I think, in this cycle of the housing element process is the HCD expectation for substantive progress, annual progress, is higher. So in showing substantive progress such that we retain our certification with ACT was also a factor. But I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth and Erica to further expand on my responses.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Yes, so like Kevin mentioned, many of these are implementing state legislation that's actually already in effect. And then we, of course, worked really closely with staff to develop these timelines in a manner that makes sense. Some of these are programs that the city is already working on, such as the zoning code update and the fee study. So we worked within those existing timelines. Other timelines of the housing element, the way HCD sees this is you don't want to extend your program timelines throughout the life of the planning period. So you don't want to set completion for like year 7 or year 8, because the intent of these programs is to really make sure that achieving your RENA target from a production perspective is possible, and that if to the extent possible, the city is not is facilitating that development in a manner that it can be built within the planning period.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful. I guess I have a few comments about some of these timelines and some of the programs, but I'm not sure, Chair Isiano, if this is the moment, or I'm unsure, like when do I get the opportunity, or when do we get the opportunity to comment on the draft?
If I could recommend to the chair and the rest of the commission, I think any changes to program timelines or moving around program suggestions, which is certainly the discretion of the planning commission, I would recommend that you discuss that during your deliberative phase following the close of the public hearing to allow the public the opportunity to comment first. So if the vice chairperson is okay with that, that would be my recommendation, to allow public comment, and that may factor into that substantive discussion as well.
Certainly, we'll hold off on that until staff deliberation or commissioner deliberation. Commissioner?
Yep, I have a question. Kevin, I did notice toward the end that it says that HCD can take up to 90 days to review this. Aren't we like a little behind, since our deadline is February and we're in December?
So we have to be done by February. As long as we're done by February or earlier,
Okay,
then we don't get in trouble.
okay,
If it takes them up to 90 days, that's bluntly on them. But our goal
Okay.
is we got that automatic 90-day extension. So if you take action this evening, then we plan to go to council at the first meeting in January and with a follow-up consideration in second meeting, which would meet that timeline.
okay.
Again, if it takes them 90 days, that's on them, but we've met our legal obligation. And Erica or Elizabeth, if I've said anything wrong, please correct me.
No, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder? Oh, sorry. I see Councilmember Jackie raising her hand.
Is it okay to go? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I have one more question, but I can go after everyone gets it.
You know, why don't you go ahead, Vice Chair?
Thank you. My question is, Mr. Snyder, if we were to make any suggestions for any modifications, would we be able to schedule something to continue on in that timeline that you just outlined for us to be able to meet in February? Do we have the ability to be able to come back with these comments, make suggested edits, and then, what would we need to do? I just want to get a sense of what is possible and available as we continue.
Just to clarify, are you talking about the commission or individuals?
No, the commission for the, to approve the resolution for recommendation. If we decided that we weren't ready to move that forward because there were some edits that we would like to see reflected, I'm saying, is there a possibility for us to still do that and, maintain that, that timeline that you just outlined for us?
So the short answer is yes. I mean, we would ideally, if there are changes that the commission wants to make, we would certainly welcome the opportunity to identify them tonight. If that's not possible or the commission wants to take more time, we can certainly schedule a follow-up. You could motion to continue this public hearing item to a date certain. We would likely have to do that as a special meeting as we are going into the holiday, and we are not planning a second meeting this month because it is right during the holiday season. But if we had the majority of commission available for a meeting prior to then, for example, you have a special meeting next week, unfortunately, we would not have adequate notice period. So we could attempt to do that in early January and push back the council consideration, because council, so the dates I gave the commission are our ideal dates. But if we went to city council on January 19th as the first consideration, and to council again on February 3rd, I think if I'm getting my dates correct, that would still help us meet that February 12th deadline. So yes, Vice Chairperson, there is the opportunity. However, if the commission does want to make changes and you are ready to do so this evening, or propose changes, we would certainly welcome that, just to continue us along this process. And as I mentioned before, we were, as a city, we were not given a lot of time on this. We got our arena numbers late, and so I apologize for kind of the hurry up aspect of this. But and unfortunately, despite the efforts of many parties to convince the state that because of the pandemic situation that an extension seemed reasonable, they declined to consider that. So we're operating under these fairly aggressive schedule timelines.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I just have a question. In your analysis, in your report, did you happen to take a look at the California Opportunity Map and kind of do a compare and contrast what we currently have as whether it be low resource or high resource in the city? And I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Erica or Elizabeth, I don't know if you guys want to respond. We've had a recent previous conversation about this, which lends back into tax credit financing, but I don't know if one of you wants to respond to that.
Sure. Yes, that is definitely one of the factors that we use when we're picking out sites for the sites analysis. And one of the components of the housing element, as I mentioned, is what we call the AFFH analysis, affirmatively furthering fair housing analysis. And within that, we analyze specifically all the sites that we have picked as they compare to the existing resources in the areas and what that means for the sites and the opportunities that it would provide for the lower income households specifically.
Okay, so the reason I'm asking this question is because you mentioned downtown Indio, and currently it's considered a low resource. And so when we have affordable housing contract or developers or nonprofits that want to build affordable housing, sometimes the financing part of it becomes very difficult for them to apply because our area is designated, for instance, downtown, as a low resource instead of a high resource area. So I'm just trying to figure out if, like, what would be your recommendation for that? Or is it something that we would discuss?
If I could jump in, I think having the certified housing element, that particular program is annually reviewed and modifications are made in terms of the high resource or low resource designation. I think when we have a certified housing element, we're in a strong position to go back to the to HCD, which also runs that program, and work with them to align the new certified housing element with that program and make necessary modifications. So to me, and Erica and Elizabeth should weigh in as well, to me, having a certified housing element with the site's inventory analysis identified puts us in a stronger position to make a case of needed modification to HCD for that tax. And we're talking about tax credit financing. So for the benefit of the rest of the commission, high resource and low resource, there is the California tax credit program, which provides 4% and 9% tax credit financing for affordable housing. And based on state changes in state law in 2018, they have a new program where they actually go through in each municipality and they assess and map out these high resource and low resource areas. I think our housing element will help us make that case for modification that may increase the designation from low resource to high resource for some, perhaps all of the sites. But Erica or Elizabeth may want to weigh in as well.
Sure, Elizabeth can speak to the programs after I do, but I also wanted to just point out, so, you know, we do identify sites in the downtown area because of all the efforts the city has been making and will, you know, continue to make for redevelopment and to revitalize the downtown core. However, only about 200 units total were identified in the downtown area, and that makes up about about 5% of all the units we've identified as available for lower income housing. So a lot of the sites and units we've identified have been in other areas that do already have higher resources in where they have been identified. And then Elizabeth, if you want to jump in terms of, you know, programs to incentivize it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we certainly recognized where those higher opportunity and lower opportunity areas were within the city. And you'll notice that the programs of the housing element, many of them are aimed at focusing future planning efforts in a manner that does advance fair housing. So taking into consideration where decisions are being made, where funding is being allocated, and allocating that funding through a methodology that aims to create opportunities for upward mobility and increase access to resources, access to opportunity for clean environment, education, employment. These are the factors that are all considered within the TCAC resources.
So Commissioner, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I think the long and short of it is that, and you and I've had a separate conversation about this. I think the city, again, having that housing element, particularly certified housing element, I think puts us in a better negotiating position with HCD to be able to point to the needed modifications to that mapping, the current mapping that they've done for our community where they've designated these areas, but they don't necessarily have maybe the background information that they need to have to better reflect what they need to do to update those maps. So I think once we have that proverbial plan in hand, we can go and sit down with them and seek those modifications that will help the affordable housing developers who are desirous of seeking that tax credit funding, but may not be necessarily in the strongest position based on those designations.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner comments?
I just want to ask real quick on the question that Commissioner Lopez asked as far as the California Opportunity Map. Are we talking about the opportunity zones, like the zones that are highlighted as opportunity zones within the city? That would maybe, or is that something separate?
It's unfortunately similar terminology, but something separate. The federal opportunity zone designations and then the opportunity mapping that the state has done for tax credit financing allocation. They use the same term opportunity, but they're two separate things. So what we're talking about specifically is a mapping effort that the state has done statewide to identify areas within each community that are high resource and low resource, with high resource being those areas that are likely to get more consideration for tax credit financing. And again, in the state of California, there's two major tax credit financing programs, the 4% program and the 9% program. And these are the programs that most affordable housing developers seek to pursue funding through. It's a very competitive application process they go through. So being in a higher designated area makes them more competitive. But it's unfortunately a similar terminology. So it can get, so it's a great question because it can get confusing.
Okay. Now, is there anywhere in the report that would highlight an opportunity zone that would maybe encourage developers to do something in those areas because they do offer tax credits?
Right. So we have on our city website the mapped federal opportunity zones, and there are federal incentives, federally based incentives in those areas that could be applicable along with potentially the state tax credit situation. So they don't necessarily, they don't work in alignment, but they could work in the same location.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
I actually have another question.
Okay.
Following that same question, and thank you, Council Member Lopez, for bringing this up about these particular types of zones. Kevin, you were outlining sort of the strategy after the adoption of the housing element. Does that need to be outlined in the housing element as you know, as a program that we will be, you know, pursuing this, you know, reassessing of the maps? And then the second half to that same question is, are there strategies that could be set forward now before we get there, or because we're reliant on sort of this agency to, you know, reassess, you know, what are some of the things that we can be doing locally to you know, to offset some of those opportunity challenges? And the reason I say this, and you know, thank you for sending that map of the land that we own, is there's so much opportunity in the downtown, and for it to not be, you know, considered one of those incentive areas seems a bit you know, I feel like we might be at a disadvantage. And I recognize that it only needs about 5% of the of our total target, but you know, I think you know, dense and development in this particular area has been an interest of the commission, of the general plan. And so I wanted to ask you those questions.
Sure, I'll give an initial response, and then Elizabeth or Erica may want to weigh in as well. But do we need to put it in the programs? My answer would be no, because the programs are geared towards compliance for housing element purposes. What we're talking about is going to the state and using our housing element as a measure, as a tool in the negotiation to have them update their maps. As I mentioned before, they annually update those opportunity maps, and they do it based on a variety of factors, but mostly based on new data. And we're going to have a whole bunch of new data to present to them so that they will be in a position, I think, a more informed position, because they rely upon existing data, particularly census data. And our analysis is very current and real. And then on your second question, I think the short answer is, as I mentioned at the beginning, specific strategies, kind of getting more into the weeds, if you will. That's the next phase of this project. So getting the housing element done is first. The second phase is to begin a conversation with this commission, the council, and the community on what are actual pro-housing. And we keep saying pro-housing. Pro-housing is a designation that we could receive from the state, that we want to receive from the state, because it makes us more competitive for grants that support housing, whether they be infrastructure or direct housing supportive grants. So getting that designation puts the city in a very competitive position, and there aren't a lot of cities currently in the state that have that. So getting that designation could be very good for us. But going through that conversation of strategies is where I think we'll get into the proverbial nitty-gritty and really be able to identify those strategies. But again, I'll turn it over quickly to Elizabeth and Erica if they want to add anything on either of my responses.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to add on to that. I I see that this is almost like a two-tiered approach where what Kevin's discussing is actually changing the map itself based on updated data. What I was mentioning is that the programs of the housing element, such as the place-based strategies, while these are high-level programs, these are programs aimed at advancing access to opportunity. So exactly where that's focused at the end of the day, that will be determined through the implementation. But the intent of these programs is to really create opportunities for upward mobility and better access to resources. So it is included as a part of the housing element, not from a perspective of changing the map in how the state may define it, but from the perspective of having that influence from a longer term approach through the programs of the housing element.
Thank you. At this point, shall we move forward to additional public comments, or we'll open the public hearing? And do we have any public comment?
There were none.
Okay. Seeing that there were none, we'll close the public hearing. And commissioners, we've asked a lot of questions of staff, and do we have any more discussion regarding this? Do we want to?
I just have a question really quick for you, Kevin. What are the plans to, and I don't know if this is outside of this or not, but what are the plans for the $3.8 million that we have that's going to be going towards, I guess, what, affordable housing? I guess for maybe, I don't know if it's going to go towards land acquisitions, or I understand we have a pot of money. Is that part of it? Like, what are we doing to, how much money are we going to spend next year on this to move some to kind of get the ball rolling? Is this, we have to get this done, and then is this like what I'm talking about is like an action item? Is it part of it, or is it after the fact? I'm trying to figure out, like.
Let me see if I can answer the question. Tell me if I got it right.
Okay.
So the city has what is called a low moderate housing income fund.
Yes.
This is the result of the dissolution of the redevelopment agency and what is called the ROPS process, where we get money through this process annually that goes into this fund. The fund has approximately $2 million in it right now at this moment, which if you per unit basis, and this money has to be used for affordable housing. It can only be used for affordable housing, the production of affordable housing. And if you figure that affordable housing on a per unit basis right now runs anywhere between $300,000 to $400,000 per unit, depending on the location of the affordable housing, you can see that money doesn't go very far. Yeah. So it is a policy and strategy conversation. The housing element itself does not address that, but the housing element program proposals could be a basis for utilization of those funds as long as it led to production of affordable housing. And so your action, if you deem to take action this evening, sets a potential foundation once the council takes action to then have a follow-up policy discussion with the council on how those, and I keep saying the council, we do have the Indio Housing Authority and they do act as the board of the Housing Authority. So to be correct, it is the Indio Housing Authority Board, which is in this instance is also the council, for them to consider potential utilization of those funds. But again, it does need to be used for affordable housing. And I don't know if Erica or Elizabeth want to add anything to what I said, but it would be and it could be also in the vein of the what I just referenced, those upcoming pro-housing strategies. That could be a part of those discussions on how best to utilize that limited but potentially impactful money. So Erica or Elizabeth, do you have anything to add or correct if I said it erroneously?
I feel like the only thing that I could add, and I'm not even sure if it's that valuable, but we do have that program for the consideration of a housing trust fund. So where there is money for housing that becomes available to the city, that could be an opportunity for collecting those funds to implement the production of affordable housing.
Commissioner, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, but I'm just trying to figure out, is it an action item after we get this?
I would say that
Or is it something that I'm going to recommend on top of this?
I would say that you, along with the council and the community, are going to have, once we get this done, we have a second phase of the grant funded work to pro-housing strategies. And I think I would recommend to you and the rest of the commission to reserve that topic for that discussion, because that is a strategy discussion. Those are available funds, as as Elizabeth mentioned, the concept of a housing trust fund that could be used to support that concept if that was a preferred strategy. That it could be used for direct participation in a project. It could be used for acquisition of. So my point is that, to me, that is a strategy conversation that's going to come in the, we're going to start talking about in the relative near future.
Okay, so I can't say, I'd like to have that earmarked for acquisition.
Well, I'm not telling you that you can't say that.
Make a
What I'm
recommendation to have it earmarked.
You could. What I'm saying is I think there's another forum to have that conversation.
Got it.
In the
Thank
near
you.
term.
I'm just jumping ahead. Okay, thank you.
Okay, commissioners, what do we think as far as moving forward with this? It sounds like we'll have plenty of opportunities to address some of the concerns that we as a group have brought up in the future. And it sounds to me like this is the first step in getting us to achieve our targets.
Yes, I agree. I think there's been a lot of time to make comments, and there will be more times after the fact, but I think this is time sensitive, and we probably, unless we have some major concerns, we should move forward with it. So unless someone has a different opinion, I'd like to make a motion. Okay.
I actually do have a different opinion, and the reason is because, once we move this forward, language is very, very important, I think, and we really need to outline things. And even though we're not going to get into the weeds of the strategies, I think that there are certain things that could be outlined in this sort of format that is the housing element. And so I'd like to put some things up as things that I was concerned about with the programs, if that's okay. So for program 10 in particularly, and I have my notes, I don't have the thing I'm trying to maneuver, but program 10, I wanted to see if there was any way to add the potential of the waiving the fees, where it's not as a potential strategy. Within that, if we think it's necessary, and it will actually give us the opportunity to, or it'll give it more teeth as a potential thing that we can look into. For program 21, it's actually in line to what Commissioner Lopez was saying. And I wanted to see if there was any way we could add something about looking into gap financing, which I know that is used as a strategy a lot of the times, and adding that in there to as we're looking into these processes, making sure that that is something that is highlighted. Program 29, I wanted to say that the reduced parking for multifamily homes seems to be a concern. I've worked on this low-income housing project in the city of Coachella, and one of the biggest things that came out of that was that there isn't enough parking for a lot of these folks, because there's like several working adults in a home. So I wanted us to, maybe this is not the moment, Kevin, but just to really think about what we would be doing when we were doing that, if we would be affecting this low-income families that unfortunately need to have several cars in order to do many jobs. Program 34, I have, how can we make it more available to low-income housing groups? And I know that you all were including the inclusionary housing, but I wanted to see if there was any sort of clarification that we needed to do about the funds that are available through this process that Kevin was saying. And if there is a need to evaluate, does our intent or the program, if it doesn't include an inclusionary housing, or if it doesn't include, how are we So I wanted to make sure that we're not sort of setting ourselves up for something that, you know, we could go down the study, but if it doesn't work for the city, then does that mean that, you know, this trust fund is not going to be accessible and available if we come to a roadblock? And so those were my concerns. My intent is not to hold us up or, you know, but I do think that it would be good for us to address some of these things, especially because, you know, this becomes a document that sort of holds us responsible to our folks in the community. And so I just wanted to share my thoughts.
Chair, could I provide some response to the Vice Chairperson's comments? I think, Vice Chairperson, those are all good comments. And they're a level of detail that I think is the next stage of conversation. And it occur in a couple of different ways. One is through the pro-housing strategies conversation that I've referenced several times now that'll be coming after this. That's one avenue for discussion. And I think getting further into detail about some of the thoughts you have, whether it be the parking situation or others, certainly that is an opportunity. A lot of these are going to be ultimately coming back to the commission in some manner, particularly if they involve changes to code or consideration. So I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but I think there is no, by taking action this evening, I don't think this in any way closes the door to future discussion with the commission, with the council, between the commission and the council on the maybe higher level of detail strategies or considerations or concerns that the things you pointed out. I think that the opportunity exists. So this, in essence, for lack of a better word, is the framework for those conversations to come. And again, I think there are multiple venues, but I'll also refer to Elizabeth or Erica if they want to either correct what I said or add to.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the only thing, I mean, if you're concerned about something like, well, does this program have enough teeth to it? Like Kevin said, upon implementation of this program, you can add more teeth to it. We've certainly made some of the language a little more flexible because we've heard feedback in different capacities. So we've tried to develop a plan that sort of meets everyone's needs in some way. But yes, Kevin, you said it perfectly. A lot of this will be, the details will be sorted out through the implementation. Regarding the housing trust fund, if for whatever reason the feasibility analysis was determined that inclusionary zoning was not feasible or anything along those lines, the housing trust fund actually, just having one, it makes you eligible for state and federal grants that you're not eligible for otherwise. So it's really just a fund for collecting money, and it could be from a lot of different sources. So it doesn't have to be from one dedicated source. It can be from a lot of sources, and certainly through the development of a housing trust fund, that's when you would sort out all the details of how those funds are going to be expended.
And if I could add one additional thing, just to what Erica said, that you had raised some questions or thoughts about the development fees. And just to, for the purposes of the public record, anytime we look at development fees, we have to go through a very detailed analysis to substantiate those fees, whether they be increasing, reducing, or waiving. So any consideration of changes to development fees would require that, and ultimately that would be a public process as well. So a lot of, as Erica said, a lot of these are in the context or written in the context of evaluating, because a lot of these have precursor work that needs to be done before any substantive policy discussion with the commission and or the city council can occur. So that flexible term that Elizabeth used just a second ago is really how they're written. And again, the timelines, and I'll take full responsibility. I tried to analyze in terms of what I felt reasonably with the staffing resources we have, we could do and be successful at it. So some of these things may not come as quick as the commission or the public like, but I think reasonably we try to make sure that we could actually perform them and do them in a manner that, again, shows that substantive progress forward that is so important to HCD.
Thank you.
If we don't have any more comments, I'd like to make a motion. An amendment to the City of Indio General Plan 2040 adopted on September. Hold on a second. This is not the actual action. There we go. This is how you know it's late in the day and I don't know where I'm going. Sorry about that. Let me try again. I'd like to recommend we adopt resolution number 2013, a resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Indio recommending to the City Council an amendment to the General Plan 2040, adopting the City of Indio Housing Element 2021 to 2029, subject to specific findings and conclusions, and determining that the project will not have significant impact on the environment because the updated housing plan is a policy document and is adopted would not result in any direct or indirect physical impacts because no development or construction is authorized by this action, and adopting a negative declaration for the project.
Do we have a second?
I'll go ahead second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chairperson Isiano,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Saha,
Yes.
Commissioner Valdez,
Yes.
Commissioner Franz,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Chair, can I just say one thing? I just want to
Yes.
thank both Elizabeth Dixon and Erica Van Sickle. They have been not only consultants, but partners in this, and they have done incredible work on behalf of the city. So I just want to say thank you to them. They have given up a lot of evenings and weekends working on this in partnership with the city staff. So just thank you to both of them. And thank you to the commission for your support this evening.
Thank you for your cooperation and dedication. And then moving on to other items, it appears that this item will be considered a special meeting on December 14th, 2021.
Chair, you're referencing 7.1,
Yes.
the other item.
Shandy Square.
Yes, just for the public record, due to an error, technical error in the public noticing, we have scheduled and noticed a special meeting on December 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. This special meeting is for the purposes of consideration of the Shandy Square Conditional Use Permit 2107-1069 and Design Review 2107-489. That would be the only item this evening, and that has been publicly noticed. But however, we did put this on the agenda because if there is any individuals that do want to make testimony this evening, they can. And as the city attorney may need to explain in further detail, although they can make testimony this evening, they do need to return on the 14th and make testimony during the public hearing to have that actually considered in the record. Am I correct, city attorney?
Correct. Thank you, Director Schneider. Yes. Anyone who would like to may submit public comment on this item tonight. However, given that the hearing will be on December 14th at the Special Planning Commission meeting, any comments to be a part of the official public hearing record should be made at that time through the methods that would be identified on the agenda for that meeting, which will resemble those on this agenda this evening.
So at this point, we'll open the public hearing and ask if we have any public comment.
There are none.
And before we move off this item, we did confirm that we would have a quorum on December 14th. I just want to reconfirm with the commission. I believe that Commissioner Valdez, Commissioner Lopez, and Vice Chairperson Rodriguez Ceja will be available. So we do have a quorum. Is that still correct?
Yes, it's the same time, correct?
December 14th at 6 p.m.
Okay,
Yes.
got it on the calendar. Okay.
Okay. Just want to thank you. I just wanted to confirm that so that we did advertise it, but if we don't have a quorum, obviously we cannot proceed, but it sounds like we have a quorum. So thank you for making yourself available on an off night, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close the public hearing.
And just for the record, close the public comment portion. There's
Okay.
no hearing tonight. The hearing will be on December 14th at the meeting Director Schneider mentioned.
Quick question for staff. We did have, was it just a design review on this project at one point in the last year?
No, so this is where unfortunately we get and I even have done it myself. Shandy Plaza on Indio Boulevard, you did do a design review for this, however, is Shandy Square at the south west corner of Varner Road and Jefferson. So it's at two different sites, but I myself have flipped.
I understand
the
that
name.
site, the site on India Boulevard, but I know we did review something.
Oh, there was
on-
there was a project consultation.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. There was a project consultation.
That's
I think about 6 to 7 months ago. So yes,
okay.
was when Rosie Lua was still here, and she brought that to you for your review and input. But no formal public hearing was occurred.
Okay, so this will be considered on December 14th at a special planning commission meeting. Action items, there are none. No study session items. Any commissioner comments? Jackie?
I just, first of all, I'd just like to thank Director Snyder and everyone for a wonderful year to end. I'm so grateful for your support and help. I've definitely learned a lot being the chair. Kind of you're sitting there and then you're the vice chair. It was like with Gloria, but when you're actually running a meeting, it's a whole different gambit. So I just wanted to thank you and I've learned so much from you and from Layla and everybody on planning. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And Nico, best of luck to you. We're all here to support you.
Thank you.
Same thing for you, Vice Chair. And so looking forward to another great 2022 and moving the city forward. Thank you.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Jackie. It doesn't seem like too long ago that I was the new guy sitting on this end of the dais. So in a blink of an eye, here I am. I look forward to serving as chairperson, and I thank you in advance for all your assistance and guidance, because I will definitely be needing that. And I just want to thank my fellow commissioners for the time and dedication that you put into this, away from your personal and professional lives. It can be time consuming at times, but in the end, we've done some wonderful things for the city over the last few years. And I hope that 2022, I look forward to more in-person meetings, and I look forward to us taking care of a lot of business in the next year. Thank you, guys.
Nico,
Staff?
can I make a quick comment?
Yes,
Sorry.
of course.
I really just wanted to thank Jackie. COVID kind of put everything upside down, changed all the rules, and made things a little more complicated. And then all the changes that staff had to go through the last 6 months or so. But yet the whole time, you stayed involved. You made sure the things that could move forward did. So I do want to thank you for that. And remember what I told you, you're never going to be as good of a chairperson as you are the last day that you're the chairperson. Okay. And good luck, Nico. And thank you to staff.
Thank you.
Chair, if I could just add a comment and a question that I had for Mr. Snyder. The first comment is I want to say that I hope that I do you all proud in this new role, and I've had some wonderful folks taking on those roles, and I look to being able to collaborate and learn from you all and all the experience that you all have being in the commission for so long. I still feel like that new guy, and it's been, I think, a year plus now. So thank you so much for all your support, and I hope I can be proud. I want to say first, congratulations, Kevin, for that Prop 68. I saw that list, and I saw the city of Indio got some funding to do our sports park, and I was jumping up and down because I'm involved in some of the other grants out in the city, in the Coachella Valley, but I wasn't, I just showed up to those planning meetings here in Indio, and I was just super, super excited. And I want to say yay to all of Indio. Look, we have something amazing coming down the line. And so I just wanted to make sure that I said congratulations and thank you for all of your hard work. I know what it takes to I know what it takes to put together those applications, all the engagement that goes into them. And so I want to say, thank you to the development team and everyone that supported in that effort. I did have a question. You said earlier today in the meeting about the zoning and how we're going to be sort of adjusting it and not doing an in-depth, maybe reshuffling or I wanted to, I know in the past we have talked about potential conditions that we would like to add to certain zoning or to, design guidelines. I'm curious, when does that happen? Does that happen gradually in the manner that you outlined, or is there some other opportunity for us to be able to move some of those things forward that we brought up, time and time again, and I think are of interest to many of us on the commission.
That's actually a great question. In response, the reason why I brought that up earlier was just to clarify that sometimes a rezone, that term can make people concerned that somehow things are going to dramatically change. And my intent in saying that was to really put on the record that the zoning code, zoning regulations update effort that we're working on is really intended to implement the general plan that the Planning Commission and City Council worked on in 2019. So we're not going through a remapping, or really what we're doing is we're coming up with new zoning designations and in large part new development standards to support those zoning designations, and that will all be brought forward to the commission in what we're calling a unified development code. Basically what that means is that if you go to our municipal code right now and you're looking for zoning regulations, you could go to 2, 3, sometimes 4 different places in the municipal code to find them. What we're trying to do is collapse that into kind of a one-stop shopping experience where you can go to the Unified Development Code and you can find the development regulations in one location. It's going to be more of kind of like a book format, if you will, where it'll have individual chapters, and those chapters will contain the zoning regulations, the subdivision regulations. They'll have the procedural elements, and you won't have to kind of go all over the municipal code. When that will occur, I will admit that we have slowed down a little. The loss of staff has impacted that. My goal, my personal goal, is to get back on track later this month. I'm holding up the consultant team a little bit because I have a work product that I'm working on that's focusing on the procedures that I have been delayed on. They would tell you I've been delayed on it for a long time. But I'm hoping to get that done. So my interest, certainly the interest of the city manager, and I'm sure others in the city, is to bring that through the process. Hopefully, I'm going to say, mid-springish, and that would, all the things you've referenced, Vice Chairperson. I've asked the commission to keep kind of a tickler list of items that they have concerns about. Ideally, we could go through those at the time that we're bringing those regulations through. From a resource perspective, if we start picking them out and dealing with them on a one-by-one basis, it's just time consuming and takes up a lot of time that I would rather be more efficient. But if there's something that's very important to the commission, you always have the right and the opportunity to ask for consideration of putting something in front of the council in your role as an advisory body. And we're happy to work with the commission on that. But if you're willing to have a little bit more patience, I promise it will get to you in the not too distant future. And it's been a while. And again, having the staff changes that's been referenced already and having some new staff on board, I think once they've gotten over the proverbial learning curve and hit the ground running, they're going to be able to help me support you in getting to that conversation, hopefully more quickly than I'm estimating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other staff items, Mr. Snyder?
Just 2 quick things. One, the Vice Chairperson referenced, and just for the purposes of the public who may not, although this is not directly related to the commission directly, the city did get notified today that we are a recipient of a major grant for our sports complex, so approximately $8 million grant. That is a huge,
outstanding.
Yeah, and all credit goes to the city council, to the public works department, to the team supporting the public works department, to the city manager. It was a team effort. Our department has had a very limited but supportive role in that. But the team that worked on this, and this was our second bite at the apple. So sometimes if you don't try again, and trying again was a major win for the city. And I know that this has been a long held desire for many years. This has been talked about for many years. And while this won't cover all the costs, it's a huge, for lack of a better word, down payment on this complex that so many have wanted to see for so long. So all the congratulations and kudos to the collective team effort on that, because it really is really cool, if to use the slang term. And then the only other thing is I just wanted to mention to the commission, tomorrow evening, we have our third virtual community meeting for the Highway 111 corridor specific plan. That's from 6:30 to 8 p.m. And if you want to attend, you can go to the project webpage on our city website, and the Zoom link information is in there. The consultant team with staff are going to be overviewing kind of main components of the plan, some key findings. What we're hoping is to begin bringing this back to you for, you've had some previous conversations on this, you've given us our input, and we've been working on elements of the plan. We're now getting close to a point where we want to bring it back to you and start having you kind of look at the detail and tell us what you think. We are hoping to wrap this up honestly, right around the same time we're hoping to wrap up the zoning code update. This is a state-funded project. We do have a deadline of having this done by mid-2022. So right after the first of the year and working with the city manager's office, we probably will ask for another joint meeting between the commission and the council to go over that. And then following that, we'll start getting into kind of finalizing the public draft document and then start bringing that through the commission for your review and consideration, and ultimately to city council. So if you have interest in availability tomorrow evening and there's nothing on TV or you don't have anything going on and you want to spend some time at a community meeting, please join us. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission has, but thank you. Oh, one more thing. I want to say thank you this evening because this is like getting back on a bike for me. Like I said, I've been at the meetings, but I've had a great team and I'm going to have a great team doing this work. So I appreciate your patience with me this evening. It also didn't help. I mean, it helped in the fact that we didn't have several meetings for a while because with the staffing challenges we had, that was helpful. But you kind of got a little bit rusty. So I want to say and thank you to the commission for your patience with me this evening and for letting me a little stumbling and bumbling. And this will get a little bit smoother as we go forward. So thank you.
Perhaps in keeping up with Layla, you can up your little clever clips a little bit.
I don't think I can ever equal that. I mean, I can aspire, but I don't know if I can achieve.
I was going to say, we were nice this time, but next time you never know.
And that being said, as my first meeting as chair, I'm glad it was a nice, easy one. Thank you, everyone. And would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll go ahead and make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Next
To our
week,
next meeting.
December 14th at 6 p.m.
Special meeting.
Wait a second. Oh, wait a second.
I'll second.
Yes.
What happened to our little buttons that we used to push yes?
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 9:15 p.m.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful night.